good.
Man.
Oh, yeah. Push it. Jeff's here. Push it real good.
We're live, Adam.
We're live? Oh, they heard me
Wow.
singing and dancing.
Oh, my goodness.
Hello, Internet. That's going to be on the Internet forever. That's how it goes around here. Speaking of on the Internet forever, I got Jeff
Wow.
in the house. What's up, Jeff? Cool mug
Hello.
you got there. I noticed
Thank
it.
you.
It looks familiar.
Yes.
Something you have done, maybe?
Yeah.
With your
so
own
for
two
those who don't
hands,
know-
you chiseled.
Yeah, I hand chiseled these in my garage. No, I do laser cut these out in my garage and sell them. So this is my Matrix Code Rain tumbler. And
Nice.
I've got a bunch of stuff, pint glasses and whatnot.
All I see is a lady in a red dress. So
Right. There is blonde, brunette, redhead on there.
Oh, okay. There we go. And Will, what's up, Will?
Hi. I have the same mug, but with the logo of the game that I work on.
Nice.
So yeah, very good. Hello. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
We're here on the internet. Still,
we survived.
we survived. I don't know about you, but I still feel a little tired, not fully up on sleep. How about you?
I hear you. Like my hair's a mess right now. Internet, if you can see. Like I woke
it's
I woke up-
wafting.
Yeah. The alarm didn't go off this morning, so I was a little late getting to Adam this morning. But yeah. Hi internet.
Luckily, the traffic coming in was like nothing. It was like 20 minutes. But also, we did go right by where that car decided to try to fly. Did you see that news?
No.
So there's an off ramp right by our building that if
The
like
4th Street one?
what is it, Montgomery? The
Oh,
one
that.
where you're on the
Oh.
left side and like you have the hard curve. So yeah, people kept sending newspaper or not newspaper website, like news website articles about this car that decided to not brake coming into that U-turn and literally flew off the edge into the building, the clock tower building. Like
That was here?
that was here. Yeah.
Oh, I just saw the headline in the picture. I didn't know it was here.
Not only was it
Wow.
here, it was like right across the street from our building.
Yeah. Like
Well, it's like a 270-degree loop. You go back around and come back under the freeway, right?
Yep.
And
yeah,
then,
exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
Right there.
It's like, and it's tight, and it's over the bus station. Luckily, they didn't hit that $2 trillion bus station or whatever it is. That
Yeah.
thing was expensive.
Yeah, well, no, so we were looking because in all the articles that I read, they didn't say if the concrete, because there's concrete barriers obviously around the edge of it. I didn't know if they did any damage to the concrete, if they like hit it and like went through it. But no, I mean there was some scrapes, but I don't know. There's been scrapes forever, so
the concretes were intact.
yeah,
intact. So I don't
I think
know.
the car just like came over the edge and just like
Wow.
oh man, into the second story of that clock tower, and then came tumbling down. And the cop said, luckily he had a seatbelt on. I guess that was a direct quote.
Yeah, from the California Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna leave the road, it's probably a good idea to have your seatbelt on.
But yeah, so we did not decide to see if our car was going to fly. So we made it in with all the gear.
We didn't pull a Fast and the Furious.
We did not pull a Fast and the Furious.
I'm just glad that flying cars finally came to CES. That's the thing I was hoping for. this
Only
whole
here
time.
in San Francisco. Only here. Yeah, this is a test area. So and now they have like lights, like a landing strip over here. I'm just kidding. They don't. Yeah.
Did you take the Cyberloop? Was it still up? The
Hyperloop?
the
Hyperloop.
the
Yeah.
tunnel, whatever, the thing that he dug last year that had the Teslas in it and is not there anymore, I think.
So we didn't, but
didn't.
Our video freelancer Keith May, he did, and he said getting on and going through the experience was kind of like being at Disneyland, and like the people were very much like, "Oh, is this your first time? Oh man, it's gonna change your life," kind of, like. And he was just like, "Ugh." He's like, "I'm
You
just
ever
trying to
seen
get
a
to point A to
tunnel
point B."
before?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, right? He's like, "It's literally just a Tesla in a tunnel."
I don't even know where the stops are.
Well, I think Keith was going to the Las Vegas Convention Center, so I don't know where he picked it up, but yeah, he ended up at the convention center. And supposedly, I don't know, a taxi driver said that they're approving like a bunch more tunnels to be dug.
Yeah.
I don't know. But surprisingly, it was record low temperatures in Vegas, and it was cold. I have never experienced a Vegas CES that cold before.
Bone
Did it
chilling.
snow?
No,
It did not snow,
but it was
we
really
had-
dry, really cold.
and and windy. Like
And
that.
windy.
That was the worst of it. Like was the wind was just like
Yeah.
cutting right through. It
I was
crazy.
very surprised by Adam because he was wearing just a T-shirt, his usual outfit, for
Well,
throughout
I,
the CS.
I always
was like,
I always
wow.
run hot. I always run hot. So
Well, you have to like you weigh that. Hey, do I want to carry my heavy winter coat all day when I'm tromping around doing stuff
Yeah.
never.
against? I'm only going to be in the cab line for 45 minutes, and at most I'll lose like a finger, maybe two to frostbite. So it's probably fine.
Well, luckily, so we stayed at the Treasure Island, so which is not a
Oh,
great,
yeah.
not a great hotel, but it was like, and then we're where we need to be for almost all the show. So
Yeah.
actually, it ended up working out.
I went to CES and booked late, and I ended up rooming with someone for the first night I was there. And when we were checking in, they asked the scariest question I've ever heard at a hotel, which is, "Do you want to be on the pirate show side of the hotel?"
Oh,
And before I could get a no out, he was like, "Yes, 100%. I want to be on the pirate show side." So we were on the third floor, and when I opened the window until 1:00 in the morning, the pirates were out there shooting cannons and swinging and flashing lights and the whole thing. It was not great.
they don't do it anymore. I don't know when they
No.
stopped, but they don't do it anymore, unfortunately.
Oh.
I
But
don't
we
know when.
we were on the Mirage side,
Yes.
and we both got freaked out because they have like a volcano kind of show,
Yep.
and we like looked out I had looked
Yeah.
out the window. Then it sounded like you did the same thing where I looked out the window. and was like, wait, should I be concerned about all that fire down there? Nah.
Probably fine.
Yeah,
It's probably all right.
it's fine. Anyway, we're not here. Well, I guess we are kind of here to talk about CES, but we'll talk about that later. Today, we're talking about CES, kind of wrapping up the show. But more importantly, we have a new GPU. Insert one here in my hands. I actually do not have one. Jeff, you've got one? in your
I
hand.
do have one. I have one right here handy on my desk.
It looks
So
so
Ooh,
tiny.
that looks super.
It looks
There
so
we go.
tiny. Yeah, super duper. Really hard to photograph because it's all black, baby.
it's all black. It is a really good look. I like the new aesthetics to this. Instead of having like 3 different anodized colors, it's all one color. It's
Yeah.
a little bit more uniform now.
Well,
so.
I'm going to say this joke again. I asked NVIDIA how they saved money on the 4080 Super, and they said they just made it one color, and they were able to save $200. Boom. Didn't.
I mean-
I don't know. Sorry, not a great joke. All right.
I thought that was by only including 12 gigs of memory.
Yeah, there you go. But there we go. All right. 4080 Super review is a different time. Today we're
Yes.
talking about the 4070 Super review in CES, and yeah, we got some questions to get to, and some of them have been piling up over the break. But yeah, we got all the friends of the show here. Matthew Lang, happy birthday.
Happy
Matthew
birthday.
Lang, birthday boy Matthew
Happy
Lang's here. That's a joke. It's not actually his birthday. It's just every
well,
time
still
we see
happy
him,
birthday.
Yeah, we say happy
I'm-
birthday.
Skull on
I'm going to celebrate yours today.
You
There
should.
we
Yeah.
go.
You
Yeah.
should.
Skull on the comment earlier said, "Is it too early for a beer?"
Is it too
Is
early
it too
for a
early
beer?
Not
for
when
a
I'm
beer?
on the show.
Yeah, there
Right?
you go.
Oh, we actually have a new one on tap. The Taco Truck Lager.
It's-
Can't remember the name of it. Yeah. So we got.
Yeah, of course you get it
wait.
after I leave.
I
town.
know. I'm sorry.
Hey,
Yeah.
you have a keg in there now? When did this happen?
Oh, we've always had a
We've
keg
always
here in
had
the
a keg.
office. Yeah,
It's
but
just yeah.
we just switched from doing the full keg, which sometimes by the end it would take way too long, to doing
yeah.
now quarter kegs. Just be like, oh, you know what? We can actually get through it quicker and try different things.
Yeah, so come by next time. Please.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
by.
yeah. We gotta have you
I
in.
see how it is.
There you go.
Hey, do you want some water? He says when I hit the door.
Yeah,
I think they owe us both some beer, Will.
actually, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, both of you come in.
Where's my pony keg? That's what I want to know.
Pony pig. Oh.
The after show podcast, Ziv says, yep.
you
So
go.
we got Ziv, Matthew Lang, Coffee, Lindsay. My wife Lindsay is here in the
Lindsay.
chat. Thank you,
Hi, Lindsay.
VC
Hi,
Jester.
Lindsay.
We got all the friends of the show stacking up, so I guess we should start this. Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, let's. We got
what-
an ad read. What's up?
Okay, yeah. Let's do-
Yeah. We'll talk
Okay,
about it.
Yeah. All right. We got an ad read. I'm not going to be on. Adam's going to do a showcase for us.
Yeah.
While I read the ad.
I've got the product for the ad right in front of me.
All
here.
right.
Take it away, Vanna White.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This video is sponsored by Silverstone. The innovative Ice Mist all-in-one cooler allows you to stack RGB fans on the water block, which can easily direct airflow to any hotspots on the motherboard, VRAMs, or DRAM. Pick up the iSmith AIO today and equip your PC with the unique high-performance cooler.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, we talk about we supersize the 4070, and we put a pin in CES. Should have planned that one better. Welcome everyone to episode 286 of The Full Nerd, PC World's premier PC hardware podcast, the first official one back in the office for 2024. I am your fill-in host, Adam Patrick Murray. I am joined today by two very special guests. The first one is already on the screen, Jeff from Craft Computing. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. It looks a little different from this angle, but happy to be back.
You've been here in person, but unfortunately we didn't see you in person at CES. So I was like, let's get Jeff on. I want to catch up.
Yeah.
And then also we have a friend of the show, Will Smith. Will, you've been on many times, but so I don't think you need an introduction. But Will, who are you?
I was the editor of Maximum PC for a long time and launched a site called Tested.
Never
where
heard
we
of
ended up working with the Mythbusters on making cool videos about people who make stuff. But I've been a PC computer guy for 100 years, it seems like, and I run a podcast called Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod right now.
Always Be Testing. Have you ever met anyone that had Always Be Testing like tattooed on them or something?
I don't know anybody who's had it tattooed. We actually took Always Be. We liked that. That was we took inspiration from a username. One of our early first tested users' name was Always Be Clothing, and I was like, that's really good. So we just were like that's Always Be Testing is the
it came
motto.
from Always Be Closing. Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I never put two and two together.
3-layer deep Glengarry Glen Ross coffee. No coffee for you, Adam. Today is the TLDR.
Well, yeah. Actually, Blue Bottle had a saffron vanilla Nola, which I usually love the Nolas, and the saffron vanilla version is not great. So
does it have the chicory in there? Is that what makes it a Nola?
I don't remember what makes it a Nola. I just ask for it and spend a lot of money, and then they give it to me. It's usually really good. Somebody else who got the saffron vanilla Nola is controlling the verticals and horizontals. We got Willis Sly.
Hello, everyone. Please don't mind me. I'm still recovering from CES aftermath.
Yeah,
from Vegas.
We're still tired. Some of our crew unfortunately got sick. Brad's not able to be here because of that, and yeah. Luckily, we're just tired still in recovering mode. I think it'll be probably through this weekend. I feel like it usually takes a good week to get to get back to a schedule of sleep that I appreciate. So yeah, we're here to talk about CES. 4070 Super reviews landed yesterday. I think you can buy them today. I'm actually going to go down to Central Computer and pick up a different GPU and maybe see if they have a Super on the shelves. Maybe I'll pick one of those up. But if you're not buying a GPU today, maybe the 4070 Super, maybe you should wait for a giveaway. I'm going to wheel this in. I was going to talk about this before the break. Let's see if I can get this in the shot. So AMD, the fine folks over at AMD sent me these packages. Can you see this? Oh, it's kind of in front of the... Let me move.
There's
this
a lot of
bit.
boxes, Adam.
There's a lot of boxes, but it's a lot of cool boxes. Let me show this off. This is the limited edition Starfield set. So yeah,
Dibs.
That's a big box,
right? Yeah, yeah.
I call one.
If you haven't seen this, we've got a 7800 X3D. So this is actually the CPU I use in my gaming rig. The actual CPU itself doesn't have anything special on it, but the box is all Starfield branded, and then a limited edition 7900 XTX Starfield edition. And this GPU is beautiful. I don't care if you like Starfield or not. The actual looks of this GPU are awesome. Anyway.
The colorway on the side is
I know, and then the little bit of blue, orange, and red on the fins here, really nice touches. And yeah, so the fine folks over at AMD had sent this before Christmas. I was gonna do a giveaway before Christmas, but unfortunately ran out of time. But now that we're back and I have some time, I'm gonna be giving away 5 sets of these to some lucky viewers. So if maybe you're not in the mood for a 4070 Super, maybe you should get a 7900 XTX. in our giveaway. I will hopefully by next show I will have the details and can point people to the actual giveaway. But yeah, thank you to AMD for sending that over. So
Yeah, it looks really good.
those are real nice, real nice.
The color
cool
band
stuff.
on the side makes it like the Wesley Crusher edition.
Oh, there you go. I like it.
Okay, I'm back out. I'm sorry.
Oh man, you're not a Crusher fan, huh, Will? Jeez.
Well, I'm a Crusher fan.
Oh, okay, nice.
Well, Will, you're the one compensating with one too many L's in your name.
there you go. Got him. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, the giveaway is not going to be international. That's a lawyer thing that we have to deal with all the time. So it's just going to be. I think it's even just the continental U.S. For that one. So more details to come soon. But we do have details right now of the RTX 4070 Super reviews. Unfortunately, because of CES and Brad being sick and whatnot, we do not have an official PC World review of it, but Jeff is holding up his version of the 4070 Super. So I needed an expert here to talk about the review here and some testing. I did watch a ton of the videos and read articles and whatnot, so we can kind of get the consensus kind of thing. And then Will has a vast amount of GPU knowledge that he can share as well. I guess so. TLDR, the 4070 Super is closer to a 4070 Ti than the original 4070. Jeff, is that how you would?
Significantly so, yes. The original 4070, it was fine, it was serviceable, but it's not really the value that anyone was looking for at that $600 price point.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I think, kind of very nicely fills that gap for a lot of people, because there hasn't been a really exciting graphics card under $800 or $1,000, I think, in quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally we have one at $600 that at least stacks up value-wise, like frame per dollar kind of thing, with what we've been getting on the top end. In my testing, it came within, let me see the full thing, 7%, within 7% of the 4070 Ti.
And
so
yeah,
spitting distance of it,
right? And I feel like the general consensus out there is like it's about 15% faster than the non-super 4070. So yeah.
What's the breakdown on like architecture? It's a different memory bus width and different memory configuration and clock speeds. Is that the main difference?
It is no, it's actually the same memory bus. It's still a 192 of the 4070 non-super. It's same amount of memory, 12 gigs, DDR6X. It increased the CUDA core count from 5880 to I think 7160, 7200, somewhere around there. So like a 20% bump in CUDA core count, slight bump in frequencies, a little bit different performance tuning, boost tuning.
The 4070 Ti Super is the one that got the wider bus and the more memory. And then the 4080 Super just got a price drop. Small bump in performance, but it's probably going to be negligible.
Sorry, I got confused with the 4070 Super, 4070 Ti, and 4070 Ti Super.
How could you get confused?
That's not enough.
Obviously,
it's not
easy.
clear.
Well, it used to be that if it said, if it was a 70 product, whether it was a Ti or a Super, it shared the same GPU die with all the rest of that product stack.
Right.
And well, we haven't been following that rule for quite a while.
Yeah.
The 4070. The 4070 Super and the 4070 Ti were AD104 dies. The new 4070 Ti Super is an AD103.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the larger die, larger bus.
Yep.
Okay.
And also the non-super 4070 is sticking around at $50 less than the 4070 Super, which is coming out at that original MSRP of the 4070, which is what, $600? Is that the... So it's $550 and $600 for $550 with that 4070 non-super. That doesn't seem like a great deal.
That is a terrible deal. In fact, I started my video out by saying NVIDIA kept this card around at $550. Don't buy it. It sucks. Don't compared to everything around it.
The value's bad.
Well,
the value is a terrible proposition at that price point.
This feels like what AMD has been doing, right? The 7700 XT and the 7800 XT were just $50 apart. The 7900 XT and the 7900 XTX were $50 apart. This feels like kind of one of those upsell kind of things, unless the 4070 Street is actually maybe closer to like $100 cheaper. If that happens, do you think then that's an okay equation to maybe jump on?
If I think the 4070 non-super starts clocking down to maybe 475 or maybe even 450, I think that's a fair price point to have it at. You're, almost 15-18% cheaper. It's 15-18% slower. So I think that's a fair deal. But at 550, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, sometimes those boards also linger either because they have a ton of inventory that they're trying to unload, in which case the prices will go down on the retail shelves, or alternately they continue to exist because the OEMs need specific GPU price points in order to hit the price marks that they want for the full configured system. And like my guess is we'll end up seeing those 4070s in like HPs and stuff like that you buy at Best Buy versus something you would build yourself.
Yeah. So testing wise, I should also say that it does have a 20 watt increase at the max end of the TGP, and so it does take a little bit more power. But Jeff, did you feel like that was a big deal?
I didn't test overall system power in my review of it. I was mainly looking at performance, specifically, again, around that $600 price point. There have been a number of people who have been holding on to older high-end graphics cards from Pascal and Turing. Is now the time to finally take the leap and spend the money and upgrade your card.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was testing cards all the way up to like 350 watts of draw. And so it's like, yeah, it's going to draw less power, but I wasn't testing directly against the old 4070 or anything like that. So.
Honestly, I got to say, I love the way you tested, because number one, in their marketing, they were like, oh, hey, it was a 3090 for a 4070 super pricing, which a 3090 came out at what, $1,000?
$1,600.
No, $1,600.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. So, for less than half the price, you're getting a 3090, and it was close. Your numbers showed it like, it depended on the game, but it was anywhere from 4% slower to 4% faster, I guess.
Yeah, there were a couple of games that flirted with double-digit differences. I think Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, it was about 8% slower than the 3090 was, but it also pulled out some wins. Red Dead Redemption, it was 3% faster. I think Cyberpunk and Doom Eternal were both a little bit faster. So
I would expect Cyberpunk with the ray tracing stuff on to see a pretty significant performance improvement over the previous gens, given, especially if you flip on the DLSS 3.5 stuff and given the larger number of CUDA cores.
Yeah, I was going to do DLSS testing in a follow-up video, because I did a 13-game suite, both ray traced and not, and was 648 data points or something like that I went over.
The matrices get nightmarish really quickly.
Yeah. Cyberpunk at 1440p, I see the 4070 Super being about 3.5% better. And that's with ray tracing enabled, ray tracing ultra.
So the thing that you did, I think, is really serving the users well, Jeff, because like when we were looking at what the min spec should be for the Anacrusis, we were looking at the Steam hardware survey to see what kind of cards people have. And they're like, until very recently, they're like the number one card was a 2060 or 2080, kind of went up and down, right? With 5% of the overall Steam market. And those are the people that desperately need to upgrade now, because they're not seeing the benefit of they don't have enough cores to do ray tracing in a modern context for the most part.
Right. And that's kind of what my testing showed, is especially if you have a Turing based GPU and you want to do some ray tracing stuff, those first gen RT cores are not holding up to anything in this day and age.
It was interesting though, because you used a 2080 Ti, right? And it was kind of curious to see the performance differences over the 2080 Ti, but then you also included you didn't have a 1080 Ti on hand, so you used a Titan XP.
Titan X non-P, but the Pascal version. So basically exact same card as the 1080 Ti. NVIDIA's wild naming scheme. Like, hey, let's just rebrand mid-cycle every 6 months.
Right. So it was kind of fun to see the differences on that. So I mean, essentially, you're talking about the top end for the 10 series, top end for the 20 series, top end for the 30 series against a 4070, which is, or I'm sorry, a 4070 Super, which is kind of what is a quote unquote mid range, but the pricing on all those were way closer. Well, I guess not the 3090, but for the 2080 Ti and the Titan XP. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the 2080 Ti
Pascal.
debuted for $1,000, I think. The 1080 Ti debuted for, I think, $799. I know the Titan XP was, I think, $1,200, but that was kind of an outlier. But yeah, I kind of wanted to show where the high watermark for your generation of card would sit. And so, you know, if you run a 1070, hey, I was, 40 or 50% slower than a 1080 Ti. I can extrapolate that data because you tested my exact architecture now. So I wanted to make sure I had something from each generation.
Well, and then on the AMD side, you had a 6900 XT or
6900 XT. Yes.
Yeah, right. Which yeah, it's interesting because I feel like I hadn't looked at street prices for a while until you said the street prices that you saw, and then it was like, dang, for roughly the same amount as a 4070 Super, like it's actually still a pretty good card.
It really is. 16 gigs of RAM. Street pricing I was seeing like $545 for a 6900 XT. I think the 6950 XT, which is about 5 or 6% bump, was like $650 on Amazon, brand new today, like shipped to your door tomorrow. Yeah, that really surprised me when I was doing a little bit of research for this one.
Yeah, well, and Gordon's not here. Gordon is always like, oh, hey, why would you buy an older generation thing? You should get the newer, shinier, new generation thing. But yeah, still looking at Radeon 6000 series, like I feel like there's still some damn good deals to be had. I know a lot of people swear by the 6800 XT prices right now too. For that lower mid range, quote unquote, end of the market.
Sorry, Adam.
Well, I was just going to say
it makes sense to buy the older gen if you're not playing the brand new game every week. Buying the older gen doesn't hurt you, right? If you're playing WoW, if you're playing Dota 2, if you're playing stuff that doesn't have graphics updates and doesn't do ray tracing and all that stuff, you're fine, and you're living in a known fixed space, so it totally makes sense.
Well, I can't tell you how much Streets of Rogue my 3090 has played in its day.
Yeah,
nice. Well, and then also if you think about it too, take out ray tracing, which we can have a debate about ray tracing in a little bit if we want to, but a lot of people are still like, I don't really care. It's not in enough games for me to care about. If you're just talking about pure raster, then I mean, like your numbers were I don't think at 1440p any of them dipped below 120 FPS non-ray tracing, right?
No ray tracing. Let me.
So I mean, we're talking about 1440p high refresh rate gaming on all these cards.
Yeah. Which are my?
Which I mean, with the 3090, if you paid $1,600, you would hope it would.
Ray traced results. The 4070 Super across, I think I did 5 RTX games. Was 106 frames per second on average, low of 53. 4070 Ti 115. 2080 Ti still did 70 frames per second and low of 41
at 1440p.
At 1440p
with no
ray
upscaling.
Tracing, no upscaling.
Wow. Okay.
Straight.
Yeah.
And I pointed out in the video, if you are still on a 60 hertz monitor, you don't need more performance than that, unless you're doing competitive gaming or something like that. But you're not on a 60 hertz monitor if you're doing that. 6900 XT averaged 74, and the 3090 did 98. And so all of them were hovering, in that 75 to 100 FPS range. Across the board.
And that, once again, that's without any sort of upscaling at all. Whatever you think of frame gen, but at least the upscaling itself, people generally be like, oh yeah, DLSS is good. Depends on the implementation, but it is usually something I feel like the crowd is now like, oh yeah, if DLSS is there, I don't mind using it, or at least at the highest quality preset.
I use it on Starfield all the time because especially games where it's a little bit more reactionary as far as gameplay goes. You need those fast reaction times. Tiny Tina's and Starfield, and games where you're trying to look down iron sights and pick someone off. You need more frames. And who cares if there's an extra 2 milliseconds of latency? I'd rather have that than an extra 16 milliseconds between frames at 60 FPS. So,
well, recently NVIDIA was talking about how RTX has come to 500 applications or games and applications, right? So, I mean, should now we care about ray tracing? Will is now when we should care?
It's always, it depends on what you use your computer for, right? Like this is where it always ends up. If you're doing a video editing, you've cared about CUDA for a really long time. If you're doing if you're just playing Diablo 2 and have been for the last 10 years, like a friend of mine who's like, I tried Diablo 3 and 4, it's fine. I just like the old one. I just play the old one over and over again. He's fine on his Pentium 3 500. It's going to run like that game runs great. He's going to have a great time. But yeah, I don't like, I care about ray tracing. I think that the last Cyberpunk update with that they did with Phantom Liberty finally convinced me that it's worth the hassle. But at the same time, like I'm one step away from running Fortnite in DX11 mode, like basically the Switch renderer, so I get 360 frames a second flat everywhere I go. Because if I'm playing something competitive, I'd rather have the frames. So
right.
Yeah, and I'm not competitive at all. I'm a bells and whistles kind of guy. So
make it shinier, make everybody look real wet.
Yeah. I want to see my reflection on somebody's sweat on their forehead.
Get that Gears of War look.
Exactly. The drop of water runs down your glasses and you see the whole world in the drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Some Kojima stuff right there.
It actually really is. Yeah. So anyway, ray tracing is one of those things where I feel like it's getting more and more accepted. I mean, it's obviously part of our future. Will it be the future? I don't know how soon, right? Until it's like, everything can run ray tracing. I think it's not until consoles can do ray tracing better that it's like, oh, okay, well then, it starts to trickle down.
Well, this is the year the 1080s and the 2080s are going to suffer on the console ports, right? We've moved. We're not seeing cross-platform console games, last gen, current gen console games releasing anymore. So when Spider-Man 2 rolls out for PC on Steam, your min-spec GPU is going to be a 3 series, probably would be my guess, or they're going to do some heroics on the renderer to make it actually run on the older hardware, and people are going to be upset because when you talk to players, they have a 2080 Ti that they bought now 5+ years ago, and they're like, "I have a kick-ass gaming PC." I'm like,
I don't want to be the one to tell you.
I hate to break this to you, but
good.
It's still good. Really good. It's great, and but you're not going to run the game that released on PS5 last fall exclusively on that PC in 2024.
The one of the big news items out of CES was AMD dropping the APUs for 8th gen or for 8000 series, the 8700G in particular. There's talk that that's going to be a 1650, 1660 class GPU on the integrated graphics side of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a 780M, so we kind of already know.
Right,
what that performs like, and I mean, I use it on the handhelds all the time. That's
right.
So,
it's the 780M. I believe it's a slightly higher boost on the new 8000 instead of 1800 or 1900 megahertz. I think they're running at 25. But we're going to see a lot of those older generation cards, especially anything below like 70 series, be absolutely irrelevant even on indie games now that power is available to consoles and integrated graphics.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've gotten a chance to ask you, Jeff, and maybe I haven't had a chance to ask you, Will, either, but do you think we'll ever get a really solid card under $300 like we did in the past? Or do you think that's just ceded to integrated graphics?
Yeah.
I think there's hope. It's right above my head here.
Intel Arc is what he's pointing to.
We kind of got some very loose confirmation that Intel graphics have not been canceled for like a 6th time at CES because they announced Battle Mage is coming to integrated on the later half of this year. There's talk that Battle Mage might, be a solid second generation product for them. And honestly, the A750, A770, I'm actually gonna do a review video of those in particular, and I'm gonna review them against the 7600 and the RTX 4060 and go, where is the value at $300? And if you guys want competition, why aren't you looking, at Intel or AMD? Why does Nvidia have 87% of the market share? Is it just it's the easy buy, or are there other reasons? But you can't complain about no competition and then not go spend your money on someone else.
I will say when we were in Taiwan, one of the videos we actually never ended up releasing with Gordon, but when we went to the electronics districts and he was asking a lot of people who were selling GPUs, we would show up, and they'd have their little stall, of like PC parts and kind of stuff like that. And this is like in the I can't remember the area of the electronics district in Taipei, but all of the booths, you'd have like all of these NVIDIA cards, and then tucked away in the top corner with like a bunch of dust would be a couple Radeon. Maybe we saw one random ARC here and there, but I remember Gordon, he was trying to gather this information for a video, but he was just like, why all this NVIDIA stuff? Does people not want to buy AMD, whatever? And most of the people were just like, hey, like AMD just does not have a foothold here in Taiwan and in a lot of Asian countries. It's just like NVIDIA all the way. Like AMD's just either not an option, or they don't advertise, or who knows. And a couple people were like, yeah, we're always so confused when YouTubers get on and they're like, oh yeah, the AMD's the better buy here, and they're like, we don't care. That's we're just all NVIDIA. So yeah.
I mean, there's a perception that the NVIDIA cards have better drivers or better supported, whatever, across the industry. And partly it's true, though, because a lot of the tools in the game pipelines are CUDA accelerated, right? So like your GPU Lightmass for every Unreal Engine game that's come out ever only runs on a 3070 or newer card. So that means the artist and the people who are doing those light renders are literally running NVIDIA cards because they can't do that work otherwise. And as a result, when it's time to buy machines for the studio, somebody says, hey, what graphics cards should I get in these computers? That go out to the engineers and the artists and the sound people and everybody on the team, and everybody just gets the same 3070 or 3080 or whatever. So when the games are tested, they're tested almost exclusively on NVIDIA. And this is big, small, medium across the board until you're large enough studio to have like a full QA team that has, representative specs, SKUs from every piece of hardware. And until Intel and AMD pony up and work together to crack that CUDA hold on the game pipeline, it's not going to change. Like that's the thing that's the thing that's hurting them more than anything.
Well, it still always boggles my mind though, because almost all of the not the Switch, but the PlayStation and the Xbox all run on AMD hardware. So at least in my mind, it was like, well, why wouldn't developers want to develop towards the AMD hardware, because they're targeting AMD specs anyway? Do you have any insight into that?
I mean, they are, they're writing to different. So you still have to do the light maps stuff, right? Like if you think about what it takes to generate light maps, if you do it on the GPU accelerated, it takes an hour per map on a standard first person shooter level. If you do it on the CPU, it takes 12 hours. So it doesn't matter whether you're building for PlayStation or Xbox or whatever. If your artists are waiting on that every time they need to build a level, then it means that you're basically saying you can only do one commit a day, and there's only one. It's a 24-hour testing loop on any changes you make to lighting in a game, which is just, it's untenable. So it's when you're testing the consoles, you're testing on dev kit hardware, which has completely different bottlenecks and completely different driver infrastructure, different APIs on the Sony side. Like the testing for the consoles happens on the consoles, not on the dev PCs, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
We have a Jerome Van Wemelen. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. Says Unity dev here. Light bakes were not an option on NVIDIA years ago because of the 8 gig VRAM was causing overflows, so it fell back to CPU light mapping. I bought a 6900 XT specifically for that.
When I worked on a Unity game, we used a third-party plugin for the GPU Lightbakes that worked on.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, all of this stuff is fraught also, and every studio's pipeline is different. It's
Yeah. Anyway, look, back to the 4070 Super stuff. I mean, I think at least Brad's opinion was that, this is kind of what the 40 series should have launched at. Obviously, we haven't seen the rest of the cards, reviews from the rest of the cards. All we have is the 4070 Super, but this does kind of bring them in line with the somewhat of the perception. Honestly, though, I thought there would still be more negativity of like, it should still be cheaper, or it should have more VRAM, all that kind of stuff. I was surprised by the amount of people who were like, "Oh, okay, this is not bad."
I think the reviewers, I watched, I think 2 others is all on mine, but I think the reviewers overall are very, we like this card. It finally, like I said, it finally presents a good value. It finally presents a good upgrade potential for some older holdouts, and at $600 it's a solid mid-range card at 1440p. Excuse me. I got a number of comments though about this should have been what the 4070 was when it launched, or it still only has 12 gigs of VRAM. How is that even possible? Or 192-bit bus, what are they even doing over there? One comment in particular was really funny to me. Said if you're coming from a 1080 Ti, you've got 11 gigs, you've got essentially the same memory bus and whatnot. He goes, well, yeah, the performance was 150% better, but you've got 1 more gig of RAM and this memory bus, and how is that an upgrade? I went, because it's 150% faster. The specs don't matter if it's still putting rubber to road, and it's putting rubber to road just fine.
Yeah. I mean, and also I do feel like I read in more people being like, hey, this is a solid 1440p and a still, or it is much better handled for 4K. Obviously, the VRAM limits are a little bit more for 4K and the bus width and things like that, but it is better equipped to handle that than the 4070 non-super was. So,
and if we're talking about where this card is positioned and what kind of rasterization power it actually has available to it, this is a solid 1440p card. It definitely did not handle 4K nearly as well,
but still better than the non-super.
Better than the non-super, definitely better than the non-super. But I wouldn't call this a 4K card, especially at, ultra settings and like we test as reviewers, trying to make sure the graphics cards are being stressed to their absolute limit. This is not a 4K card for that. So why would you pair it with 16 gigs of memory if you're never going to feed it that much textures or that much memory allocation? It's a 1440p card. At 1440p, the largest memory allocation I had in my testing was Cyberpunk at ultra settings with ray tracing enabled. It used 8.75 gigs.
I was going to ask you, what are you doing in games that is actually using? Like, the only thing I can do to do all the memory is to do like Lightbakes on Unreal or GPU compute tasks, not necessarily gaming tasks.
Yeah, in video editing, I work with ProRes footage, and so it eats up a lot of memory when you're doing that. I upgraded to a 3090 specifically for video editing workflow, where I was eating up. I've eaten up 18 and 20 gigs before of my video memory doing that. In gaming, and again at the resolution that this card is meant to be gamed at, which is 1440p, the biggest draw was 8.5 gigs.
Yeah.
Why would NVIDIA put more memory in there for half of it to sit idle? That doesn't make any monetary sense.
They can charge you more for that card is the thing, Jeff. That's the thing.
Right,
it's cheap to add the memory, and they charge way more than the memory costs on the price of the card.
But then everyone would bitch incessantly that the card is now $699 instead of $599, and it's a terrible value, and why would NVIDIA do this to me? And they're just right. It's like,
I mean, the nice thing about market segregation at a $50 level and having the stupid, the 4070 Super, 4070 Ti, 4070 Ti Super, which is really probably a 4080 slow rather than a 4070. I don't know, but it gives you, if you want 16 gigs of RAM because you do stuff that actually uses then you can pay more and get the card with 16 gigs of RAM. But everybody who doesn't need that doesn't have to, because like realistically, we're going to see games that are using 16 gigs of VRAM in the foreseeable future while this generation of console stuff is alive.
I mean, the one outlier that everyone likes to point to in the comments, at least, is Doom Eternal. Like you crank it to Ultra Nightmare, and it can use a lot of VRAM, but
it used less than Cyberpunk, even with ray tracing.
Yeah,
really.
And it's also the most outlier of all time, because it's a single game on two games on one engine, and like we're not gonna. Yeah, if you buy your video card for one game, great. But we have somebody in the chat that the other two examples that people like to point out.
Christian in the chat says Hogwarts Legacy and Last of Us. You need at least 12 or more.
Hogwarts Legacy, I also tested, used about the same as Cyberpunk. It used 8.5 gigs with ray tracing at ultra settings.
At 1440p, yeah.
At 1440p.
Yeah.
This isn't a 4K card. And so at 1440p, where it's positioned, even looking into the future, it's going to be okay for 3, 4, 5 years probably still.
Yeah, I think that's where people get hung up, is that they look at the 4K. Like, even though it's targeted at 1440p, they look at 4K as that will be the 1440p of the future. So how well does it do 4K now? And like they feel like they get hamstrung a little bit, because I mean, in the past, that's kind of how things were, but now there's a little bit more segmentation, I feel like.
I will say the time it took us to get from 1080p gaming to 1440 as a standard, some people still say 1080p is the standard because, if you look at Steam hardware reviews and whatnot, if you can buy a $150, 144 hertz 1440p monitor, 1080p is not the standard anymore.
True.
And that's always been my argument there. But even with 4K resolution and high refresh rate monitors coming out, there's still $400, $500, $600 for the same 120 hertz at 4K. That's not the standard resolution, and there's not enough power to drive those yet. That's what 1440p was at 60 hertz in 2012. Mm-hmm. No one ran 1440p because there wasn't a graphics card on the planet that could run it. And even looking at, we've got the 3090 here. If you want 4K and ray traced, it averaged 56 frames per second.
Without upscaling, yeah.
Without upscaling, it averaged 56 frames per second.
Which, I mean, for me, I'm like, okay, that's not bad.
The 4070 Ti did 63. The 4070 Super did 60 exactly. But lows in the 30s, which people say is not acceptable today. So
I get people who tell me that sags down to 120 frames a second aren't acceptable. So
You're an elite tier, Will.
I have an indie game. I work on an indie game that's made by 4 people. We're not Call of Duty over here, man.
Couple more things before we get off this topic. The first one is, I did also see a lot of people or comments in our videos when we were talking about the 4070, or I guess all of the super refreshes, and being like, oh, well, are we just now desensitized to thinking like, hey, you know what, a mid-range card is going to be $600, I can't remember the exact terminology, but like, oh, hey, we've just accepted it now. Will, do you think do you think we've just accepted it now, and the corporate overlords have had their way, and this is mid-range now, $600?
I mean, I think the we're in a weird in-between place, right? Because we're looking at what's happening with APUs on the AMD side, and even integrated stuff with the Arc on Intel. Like I'm bullish on Arc as well, Jeff. Like I'm excited that Intel has done this. If they can make it another year or two without killing it, then they might actually have something that will take over a significant part of the market.
Yeah,
I think that there is a market gap for sub $500, $300 to $500 decent GPUs that aren't old, that are current. I mean, typically we see that in like the 60 series on the NVIDIA side. I remain like, let me put it another way. I think that the more expensive the perception it is to get into PC gaming, the worse it is for the overall industry, right? Mm-hmm. Like the fact that you could a year ago or 5 years ago buy a sub. When I started playing PUBG, one of my friends bought a $700 PC to start playing PUBG with. This is 2017, when PUBG was the kind of a hog. Frankly, it was not in a good performance state.
Right.
And he was played games on that machine for like a year and a half till he's like, I'm going to spend some real money and build a real PC. I don't know that that's like, the further we get from that, the worse things get. for everyone.
I agree. I fully agree. One of the things that I've tried to address, is this a good time to lead into the way I review things?
Let's hold off just for one more minute.
Okay, one more minute. One more minute.
We'll get to it, I promise. But okay. Right, because I mean, people keep talking about the pricing; it's going up and up. Is it Nvidia just wanting to line their pockets? Is it actual, market changes and inflation, and all this kind of stuff? And people still are feeling like this shit's just way too expensive still. That if I guess usually ending on, hey, this is what it should be. Oh, Nvidia should actually just be charging $400 for this. And that anything above that is because it's just pure greed.
We spent 20 years getting the easy upgrades, the easy performance upgrades, right? And we're seeing this on the CPU side first. It's going to come to the GPUs eventually. Like as the importance of like the reason ray tracing exists, one of the reasons ray tracing is cool is one of the reasons, but one of the reasons ray tracing exists is because we'd reached the limits of what raster was going to be able to do, right? Mm-hmm. We weren't going to see performance enhancements on raster, so we needed to build new technology in that would fundamentally change the rendering pipeline and move the bottlenecks away from where they were with raster renders to what's happening with ray tracing. We're midway through that transition now. It's rockier than I think anyone anticipated. I think this current gen is the first one that's been really good, kind of top to bottom, at least so far. The previous one, the high end was okay, the low end was iffy, unless you were at a really low resolution or made some big compromises. And I think, the cards are just, the physical cards that are being made now are fundamentally way more complicated than they were even 5 years ago. If you look at a 1080 board and a 4090 board, like, it is shocking the amount of engineering that's gone to those. There are more layers on the boards, is more like everything's more dense. They're doing way more cooling. They're pushing more power into those boards. We're past the point where things are easy, is, I guess, the answer to your question. I don't think it's going to get cheaper, unfortunately. I think what'll happen is that the cheap older parts will continue being really, really good longer, maybe, but we're not in a, everything's expensive. Everything's more expensive than it was 5 years ago.
I think everything's more expensive. I think there was a time, basically between 2010 and 2020, where I think the hardware kind of outran the software development. And to your point, there was a lot of issues with, we were starting to max out, what can we do with volumetric lighting? And what can we do with this? And what can we do with that? The hardware reached a point where, even a 1060 was averaging 100 FPS on every game out of the box, brand new at 1080p. And that was a $240 graphics card when it launched.
Yeah.
We kind of got acclimated to that. As I remember a time, though, in the mid 2000s, building a gaming PC and going and spending $500-600 and adjusted for inflation, $1,200 on whatever the graphics card was, my 8800 GTS or whatever you would buy during that time. And that was required to play Crysis, and it sucked at playing Crysis. And so I think we're coming back kind of full circle to what you were saying, is the software has now started going leaps and bounds because we're coming up with new development pipelines and new ways of doing things, and the cards are lagging a little bit behind.
Yeah.
Us as reviewers, I think there's always been this push when we're benchmarking to show what is the absolute limit of the hardware. And so we benchmark at max settings. Realistically, we should start kind of tempering that expectation a little bit and identifying, hey, this is a 1440p card. Does it need 24 gigs of VRAM, or is 12 sufficient for where this sits in the market? And what can you do with 12 gigabytes of VRAM? Is this a 1440 Ultra card, or is this a 1440 medium setting card? And what does medium settings mean in this particular title versus Ultra settings versus all the bells and whistles? There's a lot more nuance than I think we've been giving the market credit for.
Well, and you have to remember, the PC game cycle is inexorably tied to the console game cycle, right?
Yes.
So we're midway through this generation. The last one went long, which is part of the reason that the thing that you described happened, right?
Yeah.
But like the last ones were raster pipelines. So we were basically turning things into textures and then layering them on top of each other in novel ways over and over and over again. And that stopped when memory bandwidth stopped increasing cheaply. So, you know, we're looking at PS5 with 16 gigs of RAM. That's the upper limit on what you're going to do. What, like, you're not going to see a 32 gig GPU in the foreseeable future, because unless you're doing like different non-gaming workflows, it's not going to be necessary until 2 or 3 years into the next console generation, when these current gen machines are old and people are building exclusively for the new machines.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, speaking of outrage, we do have a super chat I want to get to from friend of the show, VC Jester, gives $5. Thank you so much. Said, I missed so much of the conversation. Can you catch me up with what I'm supposed to be outraged about? I'll tell you what you should be outraged about. All of this talk of Jeff benchmarking and rethinking how we do benchmarks, and I go to his video, and what is he using as the CPU on the test bed? A $500 CPU, a 7900X 3D, which most people don't have. And what are settings he uses? He uses maxed out settings. Jeff, all this talk about rethinking how we do benchmarks, and you're still benchmarking just like everybody else.
No, this time I am. And it's different this time because it's a $600 card, not a $300 card. And that's where some of that nuance as a reviewer comes in.
Wait. So you paired a $600 card with a, let me double check
With
the
a
price,
500
with a $500 CPU. Who does that? Who in the real world actually pairs a $600 card with a $500 CPU?
Most people, when they spec out their parts, they will spend equal amounts of money on CPU and GPU, or they'll do what the reviewers do, and they'll go, well, I can't game with anything less than a 13900K, and they'll just go buy that.
Or they buy the best CPU because it's more of a pain to upgrade the CPU, and they figure they'll do a mid-cycle upgrade on the GPU after 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what I always do.
Which I would say 7800X3D at cheaper is actually better than the 7900X3D in some ways.
I would say, yeah.
But you still ended up using, Jeff, I'm disappointed in you.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
Should I broken out the 5700G again?
Right?
That was fun.
So
look, I have a 9900K. You can have to send me the AMD chip. I'll send you the 9900. You can test on period appropriate hardware.
Yeah, there you go.
No,
actually, I am going back in time. Actually, just yesterday, I got delivered a 5960X. I'm going to go back to X99 and test, what was the top of that. And if you have a 1080 Ti, can you upgrade your GPU, and would it make a difference? Or are you bottlenecked by PCI Express 3.0 or single-threaded performance on your CPU? Or, where is the bottleneck today? Where does it exist?
Yeah, which so for those who don't know, and maybe Will, you don't know, Jeff came out with a video. When was it? Around 14th Jan? No, man,
July. It was just before LTX. It was like 2 weeks before LTX.
It was. Yeah, saying that all the reviewers are doing it wrong, and had pictures of all of your favorite reviewers like Steve and stuff in the thumbnail, saying all the reviewers suck. They don't know what they're talking about. We should be rethinking how we should benchmark stuff. And honestly, and we talked about it at LTX, honestly, I actually do appreciate your opinion. I mean, because in traditional reviews, and I think, Will, you can attest to this, the idea is to take out any CPU bottleneck, any RAM bottleneck, and have the same systems across, and just really try to max out what this GPU is capable of. But on the flip side, that's not how people actually use it. Not everybody has a 14900K or 7950X3D, and most people, myself included, I always like to recommend, like, hey, don't play Ultra, play one step down. Like, you're getting pretty much all the way there with what you're getting. So the way GPUs are benchmarked aren't the way GPUs are actually used. I see both. And you had some good arguments, and I totally get that. But Will, what is your thought on this?
Well, look, this is the thing that we used to sit in the lab at Maximum PC and yell at each other about for hours and hours on end, and we would change from year to year. The part of the challenge we had is we had a box that was about this big to put all of our benchmarks in at the bottom of a 250-word review. So I think there's definitely a place. I think that reviewing, letting people know that their old 9900K isn't going to see any benefit if they upgrade the power supply and put a 4090 in it is probably a real reader service, right? But I also think that there's a lot of people, and I know that do, that their computer is a never-ending ship of Theseus, right? So they're always, when they have money to buy a video card, they buy a new video card, they jam it in. Sure, they're not getting as much out of it as they would if they put a new CPU in at the same time, but it's reasonable to expect some of that stuff to happen a little bit at a time rather than all at once. I see it both ways. Honestly, for me, I don't know how you all, especially working on YouTube, doing the reviews on the embargoes, like manage to actually get the benchmark matrices done that you do because I know when you get the cards. And I know when the embargo lifts, and I know how many hours that is, and I know that you get one card and you have 55 different system configuration. Like every time you add one more column to that chart, you're exponentially increasing the amount of work that has to be done. Basically, is it?
I can't swear on the show, so I can't tell you exactly what the process was like. But I kind of alluded to it earlier. I did 13 games. I did eight games, but 5 of them with ray tracing on and then ray tracing off. And so 13 titles, 2 resolutions, 6 cards. It was 624 data points. Each data point that you come up with is ran 3 times to check for consistency.
Yeah, I was going to say you have to run it multiple times because often you'll get weird outliers if you don't. Yeah,
right, exactly. And you have to catch those outliers before you swap the card. Otherwise, you have to uninstall your card, reinstall your card, do a complete driver reinstall. It is a nightmare to change your card, and so you want to make sure your data is absolute before you make that card switch. You don't want to have to go back, but each individual data point has to be ran 3 times. Let's say each test takes about 5 minutes to run. That's being pretty darn generous.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's if you're sitting there watching it, making sure,
Just this video, I spent 46 hours testing, and I got the card last Wednesday.
Yeah, and it's not like, just to be clear, it's not like you have a script that will run all 16 benchmarks one after the other. Somebody has to be sitting there watching it, hitting the buttons, because for the most part the games are completely unscriptable and
exactly.
Yeah. So it's like I think this is the beautiful thing about there being a bazillion websites reviewing cards these days, is that I think it's great for you to go out and hit a unique perspective on this, and serves a totally viable, important reader perspective, viewer perspective. But I'm glad that people are going out and doing the overclocked 14900K to see what the actual, to see where the bottlenecks are and push as many of the bottlenecks out of the way.
What I will say is I started that video where I said everyone's doing it wrong by telling you exactly why what they're doing is doing it 100% correct.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to drag race your GPUs and you're trying to find the pecking order and the value of each GPU, that's exactly the correct way to do it. The problem is you can't come out as a reviewer and state, well, the best, frame per dollar this generation is the 4070 Ti. Just go spend $800. I only have $300 for a GPU.
Yeah.
If I buy the $300 GPU, am I going to be happy with the performance? Well, it's a terrible value compared to the 4070 Ti. That's not what I asked. And so then to a potential customer, to a potential buyer, someone who you're trying to give a buying decision to, it's useless information. And that was kind of my point.
Well, and when you factor all that in on top of the difficulty buying a new GPU over the last 4 or 5 years, just with the pandemic and the blockchain stuff and all the stuff that was making GPUs weird, and the fact that prices have gone up in the last 6 years pretty dramatically, where what you were spending on a top of the line card in 2017, 2018 with a 1080 is now the price of a mid-range. I mean, part of that is because, frankly, NVIDIA made a weird decision to start calling its workstation, its workstation heavy metal cards and put them in the same naming scheme as the consumer cards, right? But the other side of it is that it's just you have people who have what was a $700 card comparing it to a mid-range $700 card. Like, is this actually going to be faster? I don't know. Usually the 9 is faster than the 7 for at least 2 or 3 of the big numbers, and it's like it's a confusing situation for everybody.
And the launch price of the 1080 was $499.
Yeah.
And that was the flagship. That was insane performance for
It
that
was
day.
an easy. I mean, I'm going to go and tell you, I spent money on a 1080. I ordered one the day they were announced.
Yep.
And I was like, this is the easiest video card money I have ever spent in my life. And that card was great.
You in that day, kind of like me, I was doing a lot of VR stuff. I was actually running a VR arcade at that time, and I went 1080, easy decision.
Yeah.
Easiest decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Well, we do have Dr. Ian Cuttress, Tech Potato fame, in the chat saying, "Why don't you have scripts, Will? Games are scriptable if you know what you're doing." Ian is all about the scripts. Yeah.
So I don't have, when I was doing benchmarks, I didn't have the time. The machines would change enough between that you'd end up having to write new scripts for each run of benchmarks, and the amount of time that I had to do the benchmarks, I didn't have time to do the scripts before. Like, I was writing 20,000 words a month, sometimes at maximum PC. And I don't, it was either write scripts or write words. And if I wrote scripts instead of words, Catherine Stevenson, who I believe you guys know, you know Adam,
here,
would absolutely have yelled at me. So
I can't publish scripts.
Yeah,
Will.
Scripts. So if they put a bunch of ads next to scripts in the magazine, everybody involved is going to be upset. So
anyway, so there's a lot to dig in, a lot of information. I feel like I'm just it is curious to see the reviews. Most of I don't think I saw one thumbnail of a 4070 Super in a dumpster lit on fire with somebody doing this phase, that kind of thing. So I guess good job, NVIDIA. I guess that's where we're at now. Oh, and Gordon's in the chat.
Gordon's
Hello, Gordon.
Hey, Gordon.
He said,
Hey, Gordon.
he says, I don't read the script reads me. So yeah,
I don't even see the script anymore. All I see is blonde, brunette, red.
Yeah. Anyway, 4070 Super, go out and buy one, or not if you don't. But yeah, for the most part though, assuming that there aren't going to be big shakeups, it looks like we have the full stack from top to bottom from all three companies, unless Intel decides to drop Battle Mage early or something. I feel like for the next 6 months, these are the GPUs we have. Do you think there's anything else in the stack for any of these teams that are going to come out?
I think the only potential might be kind of what we saw, what was that, yesterday or the day before, with AMD dropping the price of the 7800 XT. I think price drops are going to be a battle that might be waged in the next 6 months, which I say this all the time, competition breeds victory for everyone. There's not a single person or company that loses when you're competing against one another. Prices go down, which means volume goes up. That's good for businesses. Prices go down. That's good for consumers. We get better value for less money. But yeah, the 7800 XT dropped to, what was it, $750 officially, but Newegg's got it for $709 right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I forgot to get to it. A friend of the show, Coffee, gave us $2 Canadian. Thank you so much. Said, is 12 gigs of VRAM the new 8 gigs of VRAM, 1 to 3 year lifespan?
I think it has more than that.
At
1440, I think it has more legs than that.
Okay. All right. Anything else on GPUs?
I think that there's an opportunity for a 4060 Ti Super. They don't have any supers on the 60 side, so
that $450 price point is kind of vacant right now. It's just sitting there.
It's just empty.
They're waiting to see what comes from AMD. Yeah, what AMD does with pricing.
Oh, remember, no, there's the 4060 16 gig or 12 gig, because those are 8 and 12 gig cards. There's two different versions. Those. Yeah, so there's a card slotted in there somewhere.
And the gap between the 4080 Ti Super and the 4090 is pretty big. So I think there's still room for a 4080 Ti Super Duper probably in there.
Super duper.
There you go.
Duper. I like it. All right. Speaking of room in your case, before we get to the next segment, I do want to talk about our sponsor. Silverstone had sent over this Ice Mist cooler. Will, have you seen the glory that is this AIO cooler, Ice Mist?
It looks like a small drone in your thing, but I'm telling you, when I was dealing with hot RAM, that looks like it would have been really nice to have the air blowing down.
So
there.
they revealed this at CES, and one of at their booth, they had this up on the wall, and then it was just stacks of these. So it's in a boot loop. I built it and I didn't whatever, so it's not in a
I don't think he knows what he's doing. Will.
Yeah, I know.
He's just ripping stuff out while it's plugged in. And I think that's bad. I don't know.
So
I'm not an expert.
So it comes it comes like this with the cap on. You get the nice little RGB. If I can line it up right, it's hard to do it. There we go. You get RGB. This is a 280 version, but they do have 240 up to 360. I don't think they go higher than that. Really nice AIO, but the name of the game is buying these extra little fans. So all you can do is hot swap. You pull it off. You put the next level of fan on, and there you go. You have a fan added to direct airflow down onto the motherboard or the VRMs or the DRAM. Oh, I cut myself on the hey, I finally got hurt by a fan blade.
Oh,
Wow.
Willis hates when I stick my finger in fan blades,
Don't do
but
that.
I finally cut myself. There we go. I got some blood.
It's like me also not putting eye drops, or so close, or seeing people put eye drops. But yeah, don't
There
put your
you go.
finger on the fan, please do not.
Yeah. Well,
If
I
you
did hurt
do that
myself.
with carbon fiber drone blades, you'll come back with a stump if you're not careful.
There you go,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, so and it is rotatable on there. So when you put it on, you can actually rotate the fans, and then you can also stack it. So in this example, I have 3 stacked fans on top of here. I do want to see the theoretical limit. We joked around about it at Computex. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, I mean the idea that you stack them on there, you kind of rotate wherever you want it to go. Really cool stuff. I haven't actually like done any testing to kind of see what how it does affect the airflow. So I can't say to that, but I mean you are getting more airflow directed down on wherever you want it to go. So
Are the fan speeds controllable, Adam? Do you know?
yep. So
that's awesome.
not only is it controllable, it also has RGB, and it is controllable RGB.
I like all of
you
these
can't
things.
you can't control them individually. It is
Okay.
one go. So if you have multiple fans on the stack, I don't believe you can address each one of them differently. It just treats it as one big thing. But yeah, no, I dig it. Super fun, and like I said, it's you can just bend
Don't
it. And,
put your finger
I know,
in there.
I'm sorry, it's hard to see from this angle. Yeah, you can just configure it how you want. It's a really cool system. I dig it, and they're sponsor of the show. So and now we can say we got blood money.
Oh my god!
Because
there is blood. Oh my goodness.
there is blood, and yeah, we did get money for the sponsorship. So no, it's fine. I'm not fully bleeding, just a little bit. Oh, thank
If we
you.
need amputate, if you need to, just let's
There you
please.
go. Yeah, I'll do a tourniquet live
gosh,
on the air.
VC Gesture in the chat says, let's get a 10,000 RPM Delta fan and teach him a lesson.
Yeah,
Oh my
there we
goodness.
go. No, it was funny at CES. Every time we would hit a demo, I would just be like, "Oh, check it out! Is this fan on?" Just stick my finger in it.
And then blood just
I
splatters
did-
all over the camera. I was like, please don't.
They don't do the Tiger doesn't do the PC building race anymore at CES, do they?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a bummer.
yeah.
That was always really fun, but they'd get like 30 or 40 journalists in there and jam them all into a ballroom and have them build a PC, but it would always be in like a bare metal, terrifying, like jagged edges everywhere case. And one year I was doing it, I nicked myself and just it looked like the inside of a horror movie in the case at the end. So when I was ended up being the first person done, and they bring the camera over, they're showing it, they're like, what's this all over the inside of the case? I was like, you probably don't want to touch that. It's fine though, but
Yeah.
don't, bodily fluids, just watch out.
It's it's your Tim, your very special Will Smith Tim all over.
Yeah.
Speaking of CES, obviously we had our live from the CES show floor episode where we kind of talked about the high level stuff and kind of went over some of PC World's best picks from the show floor itself. So this isn't about necessarily recapping again what came out of it, but I have two people here who weren't there, so I kind of want to get their take from afar, or if they had any questions for us who were there, kind of stuff. But then also I kind of want to expand it out a little bit past PC, because I was saying earlier, when we're there, we're just heads down in PC. So it wasn't until I got home that I was like, oh, okay, now I get to read about the other stuff that wasn't PC related that happened at CES. And I'm like, oh yeah, I always forget, like CES is huge and we're just focused on one little area of it, and there's still a ton to cover, and then there's just so much outside of it that happened. That's super
My
fun.
impression overall was, as far as PC goes, it was probably a little lackluster. Simply because I think we got all the big announcements in December. We got, AMD and Intel both having their large conferences in December as far as their announcements go. And we already knew about the super cards, not exact specs, but we knew the supers were coming, back in October, maybe. I think I started seeing rumors. And so as far as the big three in the PC space, there wasn't a lot to talk about. There's no real big new products. There's no, new generation of CPU. There was nothing there.
It was mostly filling in. It was mainstream,
Yeah.
CPUs. So that one, the one Radeon 7600 XT.
Yeah.
We don't have reviews of that yet. So
Yeah, we got spec bump announcements instead of like, here's the next generation of the next 3 years of whatever you're going to be using.
which is not bad. Honestly,
Yeah.
though, I personally don't think CES is the spot to do that, because CES
Right.
is like not just about the PC. That's why I love Computex, because
Mhm.
Computex is all PC all day, baby. So I'm okay with CES being like a little more chill mid-cycle, and then Computex being like the blow the doors
I
off.
will say probably the coolest or the most thing I'm looking forward to most is some of the monitor tech that's coming out. We're getting super high refresh rate, 4K, 360 hertz OLEDs and things like that are starting to trickle their way into the market, and I think those are going to be kind of one of the next frontiers now that 1440, 144 hertz has kind of settled into its place. There's some really cool tech, super color accurate, super fast refresh, super low latency.
Mhm.
That's all kind of on the precipice of being the regular thing that we see in our PC builds. So
Yeah, the backlight strobing thing that NVIDIA announced seems like I want to see it in person, but it sounds
mhm.
like on one hand it sounds really cool for somebody who sits in front of an LCD all day. On the other hand, it seems like we're spending an incredible amount of engineering and time to basically replicate CRTs, which
You made that point on the recent Will and Brad Made a Tech Pod, and I was like, oh, you know what? That's actually pretty accurate.
Time is a circle.
Yep.
I really wish I hadn't gotten rid of that old Sony 24-inch that weighed 300 pounds that used to be on my desk. I don't think my standing desk would go up and down with it on it. But, for me, it was more the stuff that I love is walking around, and I spent a lot of time watching CS TikToks of people walking around the floor showing weird case designs and stuff like that. I always love that kind of stuff. The stunt stuff has a definite appeal. Like the transparent micro LED that Samsung was showing,
Mm.
that's not a real product. It's not something they're going to sell in any quantity at all, ever. It has a whole host of problems that are immediately obvious when you think about what it would be like to have a transparent screen in your living room. Still super cool.
Yeah.
The LG, they had it looked like a cloud chamber box. Basically, it was like a box that was clear on all sides and about 4 inches thick, probably, that had an OLED, a transparent OLED on the front, and then a black. It could black out the other three sides on demand, and the black side would just kind of roll up. That looked incredible, because when you're watching something on the transparent OLED that has a lot of alpha in it, it looks like it's just a person floating in space in your living room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then if you watch normal TV on that without the sides blacked out and the back blacked out, it almost certainly is going to look terrible. I'm just honestly, the thing I missed most about CS was the good corned beef sandwiches from the back of the North Hall. There was a great place way back there that there was never a line, which was always the real secret of CS, finding lunch without waiting in a 40-minute line.
Yeah, Gordon is in the chat once again. The two things he was excited about was they announced the LP Cam 2 spec, which is the low profile memory for I can't remember compression assisted memory module. Is that what it stands for? Somebody correct me, but
They're putting LP DRAM modules on. They're replacing DIMMs and putting them onto pin attached modules to literally get the traces closer to the CPU. So right now, one of the big issues with Ultrabooks is your memory speeds are starting to hit a point where the traces in the motherboard are too noisy, and you can't run above 5,200 or maybe 6,000 at the very best. Devices are now calling for 7,600 megahertz memory and whatnot, and it's degrading just in the distance in an ultrabook. And so they're creating modules to put them closer and replacing SODIMM with that.
Yeah,
So-
which the spec has been out for a bit. It is primarily developed by Dell. There was a lot
Dell
of yelling,
championed it, yeah.
yelling about like, oh, this is Dell's proprietary thing, and it's not. There's actually a couple other.
I just said
companies.
megahertz in front of Ian. I am so
Oh,
sorry.
you're in big trouble. I didn't even catch it. Yeah, so there is other support. This is the second iteration of that. Gordon knows the ins and outs way more than I do, but he was very excited about that. The other thing that he was excited about was something we saw at the Patriot booth. Actually, Will, I think you're going to appreciate this as well. A lot of this goes way over my head, but the idea is that Patriot is putting a little what was it? I can't remember the name of it. I should have brought it up ahead of time, but they're putting a little chip on their RAM to essentially take out the silicon lottery. So being able to push higher speeds on any CPU, not just ones that have a really good controller on it. Yeah. So and I can't remember the name of it to look it up.
Anything that makes DDR5 high-speed DDR5 more stable is something I'm a big fan of. It turns out. So.
Yeah. They had a demo there running on I think it was a 12900K with what Patriot was saying was like the worst memory controller that they had in the lab, and it was still able to run like 8,000. Now it wasn't stable. He made he's like, hey, listen, it's not the most stable, but with this little chip on there,
but at least it posts.
Yeah,
which is more than you can say.
Yeah, I have some 7600 G Skill DIMMs over here that just don't do anything anymore. They're the quest for high speed memory continues. That's rock solid.
Yeah, and Patriot definitely seems to be really kind of at the forefront of like, hey, we want to get it as stable as possible. And once again, I can't remember the name of the little chip that they have on there.
Is this the clock driver one? Is that what it's called?
No, CS DDR5.
Back to the SODIMM, back to the laptop memory. Anything that gives them a way to continue letting people upgrade memory on their laptops is good, because the alternative to that is soldering soldering memory on the motherboards, which I mean Apple does and sucks. And I want PC laptops to continue being user upgradable, or at least maybe not user upgradable, but field upgradable. It's like Gordon is right. That is it is both important and huge for the industry, so good on them.
Okay, so it was Patriot, our friend over there, Shannon. Awesome guy. It was an engineering preview of CKD DDR5, and it has a clock driver added to it to help maintain stability. So he says that it doesn't completely negate actual stability, but it at least lessens the silicon lottery when you get your CPU, when you get your sticks.
Stabilizes it a little bit.
Kind of stabilizes it, and which is a good thing all around. So it's either making it more stable to hit higher clocks, or more stable for a memory controller that can't keep up necessarily. So really cool stuff. Like I said, a lot of it went over my head, so I'm sorry I can't describe it to you in depth the way some can.
Adam, did you guys see the inverted motherboards, the inverted connector? I mean, it seemed like there was a lot of talk about that stuff at CES this year, which seemed I think it's neat, but not
So it's interesting. There's a lot moving in that space, because the kind of come out for that was Computex last year, and like that was Gordon and I dubbed it like the war on cables was when it came out. And since then, there's actually stuff now in the channel. You're getting a lot more people talking about it. I actually got in before the break a Project Zero case and motherboard. I did a build in it. I did a video.
That's right. I can say that I saw that now.
I'll tell you.
I wasn't sure if I could talk about that yet. Yeah, but that sounds great.
When I was in studio, he had the box sitting right there, so I got to play with it. I can say that now.
Yeah, you can say. Yeah, you did see that. Yeah, so I'll send you a link to the video. So like I have built. I mean, I was already on board, but the biggest thing for me, I mean, the visuals. Yes, it looks more pretty. I totally get that. and that's kind of the marketing angle that they're pushing hard for right now. But for me, it was more the easy use. And I've built plenty of PCs, but like once the motherboard was in, I was like, oh, I don't need to do that little snaking thing to figure out which area am I going through, or grommets popping out. It was just like, put the motherboard in, lay it down, boop, 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 boop. Okay, cool. The Project Zero implementation wasn't perfect because there was still not enough room on the backside to the case had a not a right angle USB 3 header, so that was actually, I put a little bit more of a bend on that. I did talk to MSI later, and they were like, "Hey, we saw your video. We're going to address that." Same thing for the 24-pin power. It's just such a thick connector that it needs a little bit more room on the backside to allow for it. But and then one manufacturer in particular was talking about, and I don't want to out it here, but one manufacturer in particular was like, hey, now that the connectors are on the backside, we can do something we've talked about forever for ease of use for new builders, is color coding the connectors. So imagine you plop the motherboard in, you flip it around to the other side, and the 24-pin power is color coded red to the port on the motherboard, or the CPU 8-pin is colored there, and who cares what color it is because it's on the backside and you don't see it. So it makes it literally as easy as possible for new builders to be like, oh, okay, this is where it goes. This is where it goes. You don't have to worry about it.
Speaking for additions to new builders, can we just finally finalize and be done with it? The front I/O connections and what order and orientation you put those in.
Right.
Make one plug that I plug in.
How many of them, like, what do you even have? Like, I have power and a light, I think, is all that's plugged into mine right now. My case doesn't have a reset switch even.
Yeah, most of my cases don't have reset switches anymore. But you've got power, you've got power light and reset. Sometimes hard drive activity light. Some still come with that. But
nice to know when your SSD is doing something, right?
Right.
But I mean, honestly, though, it still was a lot easier to plug it in and did look a lot more tidy when it was on the backside. So, yeah, I think that the bigger thing and the question a lot of us had, and like almost every single appointment that we did, we met with, we're like, okay, where are we at with getting everyone on board? So, the MSI has their own standard Project Zero, which is a little confusing now because they have Project Zero branded hardware. But the spec is also called Project. I don't know if the actual spec is called Project Zero, but they're also calling it that. Asus has BTF, which was also confusing because they told us that it officially meant back to front, but then in all their marketing materials it said back to the future. So that's confusing.
Seems like a registered trademark of somebody, I don't know.
Yeah, and then I know, right? And then Wallace from Main Gear was there, talking about the and then Gigabyte, their partnership with Gigabyte, and that oh man, I can't remember. He told me on the show floor he thought it up the day before we met him as the Main Gear rear connector. So MGRC is that standard. I mean, yeah, and yeah, and each company I was talking to, has other companies on board. We actually did see Cooler Master had a case that was like, F it, we're just going to make the holes big enough to include all three standards. So, it's sloppy. Every company we talked to was like, okay, can we just sit down and figure this out? And everyone said like, hey, listen, we'll get there. Right now with these first iterations, everyone's kind of trying to do their own, but they're like, yeah, we'll get there. Asus has like an alliance with a bunch of case manufacturers and stuff like that. I mean, everyone's talking to everyone. I do believe we'll get there because we're not that far off. We're not talking about anything super, crazy between the three specs. It's more like where exactly are the cutouts. And like I said, there are cases out there right now that are like, hey, you know what? We'll just make it a little bit wider so it accepts all of the cutouts. So we're close. It just needs to be standardized.
That's the market will work it out, whether the case manufacturers get tired. Like the case manufacturers aren't going to make an Asus and MSI and they aren't going to make 4 versions of the same case. They'll just make the holes bigger on all the cases and call it a day. If the motherboard manufacturers lose their ability to be part of this conversation if they don't make it moving, because the case people will go on without them.
Well, and also I actually do feel like a lot of these cases aren't going to have a separate backside connector version either. They're just going to be like, hey, you can buy this case and plop in a normal ATX motherboard. It just so happens to have the holes for backside if you want it or not. So I didn't see anybody indicating like, hey, we're actually going to have separate case options for backside connector or not. I will say the one thing that Asus said was that if they do have something that is for that specifically, it'll have a denotation on the back to say BTF. So it'll be whatever product number plus BTF. So you know that at least if you look at the product number, whether you're buying a case or a motherboard, it does have that BTF connector spec there. So I actually think that was a good thing. Because once again, it can get confusing. The only outlier is the GPU power delivery that is an Asus thing, and I kept poking around and I got kind of mixed things. Some people were like, oh, okay, that's a cool idea, I actually like it, and some people were like, nah, that's a bridge too far. So that was the only one where I was like, okay, well, Asus has their alliance, and there was a lot of case manufacturers and motherboard manufacturers being like, oh, okay, we're going to have backside connector options. There was not another company that had another GPU with that power slot on it. So
power bus,
yeah,
right?
which I'm sure the ramp up to develop that is longer, so maybe that will be coming. But I did think that was at least a little telling. Not saying that there was other manufacturers who have that slot option on there. So
it almost feels like this would be a fantastic time to finally start looking at moving over to like Intel's ATX 12VO standard, which eliminates the 24 pin with the 5 and 3.3 volt rails and delivers only 12 volt.
Yep.
Send 12 volt where you want it, and simplifies connectors, reduces the number of connectors, increases the power delivery on specific connectors, and put them on the backside. Like, that seems to me to be the next logical step instead of trying to jam a 24 pin into the back of a case.
Well, and actually I did.
Me.
Yeah. So two things on that. Number one, the 24 pin on the backside did introduce a new thing where usually when you put the motherboard in the tray, and then you, especially new builders, you really got to push in that 24 pin, and you're worried because it starts to flex, right?
Yeah.
When it was on the backside, I kind of had a different worry that because you're putting all that pressure on the backside, I was like, man, if none of it, I gotta make sure that all those screws were in tight for the motherboard, because if I'm pushing too much on the backside, the whole motherboard's gonna pop off, right? So yeah, it was kind of a different little worry. But to the 12VO spec, I did talk to somebody. I don't think I can say who it was, but they were saying that the whole 12VO thing has been really slow running because of some specific COVID stuff and the testing and validation and stuff, that actually we will see a lot more, especially in the DIY space, coming this year. So nice. I do think it is coming, and it just has been slow moving. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about it for years, but we just haven't seen it come out. But it sounds like this is truly the year that we're going to see more options. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, Will, what do you think? This is the most, even though it's not that radical, this is the most radical change in the ATX spec in a while. Are you excited for it? Do you not care?
It honestly reminds me of when case manufacturers started cutting out the space behind the CPU, so you could take the CPU cooler mounting bracket.
Somebody else said that. Yep.
It's the same basic. Like it makes it easier. Every time I have to unplug a 12-volt CPU power cable on my PC, when it's in the top left corner and there's a fan here, and the 12-volt plug is right here, but underneath both of them somehow.
Yeah.
It sounds fantastic. I think this is a great idea. I think we should have done it like 10 years ago. It's one of those ideas that's so stupid. You're like, oh God, why didn't I think of this? This is like, honestly, the next thing we should do is put the SSDs and the RAM on the back of the motherboard too, so then they're easier to get at, and there's a whole realm of space on the back of that thing so that we can just really expand. I'm joking about the RAM, but I'm not about the SSDs. That's actually,
well, I mean, it's already on the backside of mini ITX boards. I've used plenty of mini ITX. I think higher end options mostly, but yeah. So
I don't know. I don't think there's a downside other than the downside is if we end up having 4 different manufacturer specific specs and it ends up being you have to have QVLs for your case and your RAM instead of just the RAM, and then that seems like a bad time.
It seems like a fantastic way to basically vendor lock you into a specific system. I agree. If we're gonna go this route, if we're gonna make BTF a standard, let's make it a standard that everyone follows. If we're gonna go 12VO, make it a standard that everyone follows. If Asus is gonna put graphics power delivery on their board, make it a standard so I don't have to buy an Asus graphics card to go with my Asus motherboard down the line.
Yeah. Well, presumably you'll always be able to run the cable if you want, but you don't have that one ugly cable. No, I mean if you buy a non-Asus video card for your Asus Power video card.
Yeah. So I think more cases are just going to have those cutouts whether you care or not, right? So you'll have the hardware and then it'll become okay, which motherboard option do you want? Do you want it on the front? Do you want it on the back? So I think the cases are the first thing that everyone's going to get that is going to have that, right? And then there'll be then they'll have the option to be like, oh, okay, what motherboard do I want to get? And then the whole GPU thing I think is a separate thing, but I do like where this is going. I think the only other downside is, well, I think there's 2. Number 1 is relearning some of the building stuff. Like I said, at least for me, I always build with the motherboard stuff outside of the box first. So you put in your CPU, your RAM, your SSD, all that kind of stuff. But when I was building in that Project Zero outside and I had put it on the cardboard box that it had come in, I was like, oh man, I'm not putting a ton of pressure, but it is those pins like the fragile ARGB pins or the PWM fan header pins, like those are kind of wobbling around a little bit. I mean, those can be dented whichever way it's oriented, but like I felt more like, oh, you know what, in the future, I might just put the motherboard in first, build in it, and then flip it over, plug everything in and be done. So I think it will be a little bit of a relearning for some people to, the order of operation kind of, not that it's bad to build it in the case, but it's just different. Number 2, Asus at least was saying, hey, there will be a premium because it does, as of right now, it does take a little bit more money to manufacture the solder points on the back, because those backside solder points are now on the front, they're more visible. So Asus at least is putting a little bit more decoration on the PCB to make it look, cleaner kind of thing. So they're saying, at least as of right now, all the BTS stuff is going to be anywhere from like $10 to $30 more. So not a ton more, but there is a little bit of a price premium right now. So
that's a fair premium for something that's gonna, like, think about the time in bruised skinned knuckles. Right, that's worth $30.
Yeah,
and especially if you're trying to build, a show PC and you want to hide your wires, and this is the aesthetic that you want to go for, a lot of people will spend that extra $30, no question.
The other real huge benefit of this for power supply vendors, especially, is or people that make cases and power supplies, like I guess Silverstone is in that category. Like think about they're going to know exactly on these cases that have the things, the cables can be exactly the length you need pre-manufactured from the vendor. So like you can buy the BTF power cable pack or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that your runs are precise and you don't have any extra, because the hard part isn't getting the cables hidden. The hard part is what you do with all the slack on the backside of the PC. And this should theoretically solve that problem, which is exciting to me.
It was funny, there were a couple companies that I talked to that weren't that excited about this whole thing, and it was companies that had some sort of vested interest in making the case look pretty. So the cable
mod,
the cable, you get sleeved cables, you get the combs. It was some SIs and OEMs that were like, hey, we do a lot of work to make sure everything's pretty, and now you're saying you just plug everything in the back and plop the side on, and then you don't got to worry about it. And I'm like, for me, that's awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Gordon's definitely, Gordon doesn't care either way, the aesthetics of it, but there are some companies that you charge a little bit more of a premium to get that nice cable routing and stuff, and they're like, well, now think about the cable mod people. You're going to put them out of work. Just kidding. Nobody said that, but
they'll find other. Look, there's always hoses.
right? So, but I also don't think. I think at least the options will be there, right? Once again, I think people will just start getting cases, and the option will be there whether they use it or not. And apart from the GPU thing, really, you're just talking about, okay, which motherboard do you want to buy?
Yeah,
I think that's how it will be kind of in the future. Is that I don't think everyone's going this way. I think there's always going to be room for both. So, yeah. Friend of the show, VC Jester, gives 5 more super chat. Thank you so much. Said, which YouTuber is going to make a tutorial on how to make custom length cables?
There are already hundreds of those.
Yeah, and you don't want to see me try to make custom cables. You probably wouldn't want to. But the Gordon Mong Power Supply Company, they're going to have their own custom cables.
I bet you can work a crimper like nobody's business, Adam. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we'll see.
I can make network cables. I can do those for days. But...
There you go. Oh, I know. Yeah, right. And then
GMU Power Supply.
Yeah. VC Jester also gave us another $5 super chat earlier. It said, Jeff, talk to Elena about front panel connectors. Team up and defeat that evil. Yeah, I feel like that's the next step. But and I said this a couple times too. I feel like this whole backside connector thing is just kind of getting the cobwebs off of the ATX spec and kind of getting people talking and working together and dreaming up possibilities. Because I think once everyone has got over this, which I don't feel like it's a monumental thing to get over, once they start talking, I think then everyone else will start talking about like, oh, well, now that we've done this, what else could we do? Could we put the RAM on the backside? Does it make sense to
there's a really big one that's, I think, floating out there that is kind of right in front of our faces. And it's these massive 3 and 4 slot graphics cards going into a standard that was developed in 1982,
right? With
the ISA standard, that are, these are heavy things.
They are.
And ITX case or ATX case design was made for a network card or a serial port or something like that. And even some of the heavier AGP cards were starting, we started seeing some sag on the back of those. And that was 20 years ago.
Will's got the solution. There you go.
Look, you just put one of these under the edge of the video card and then it'll hold it up, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It just needs a foot, like an extra leg.
Yeah.
Are we going to standardize the foot? What's the material of the
right
foot?
now you're operating on a 3-legged table. I'm bringing you the 4th leg. There you go.
Oh yeah, sell us that 4th leg. Thank you.
While we're talking about knocking the cobwebs off of ATX, let's talk about ATX. Let's talk about down to the connector itself. Let's talk about orientation. Let's get crazy in here.
No, I really do think, and also the mini ITX space has been doing a lot of crazy little innovations like that. That between those two, like I think we're gonna start seeing movement on it. We're definitely gonna start seeing more like, oh, we should try this. What if we tried that? Huh? We
should just hang the video cards from the top. Then it's all on that one axis. It's fine.
Yeah.
We're going to need some horrible nightmare PCI ribbon cable that goes a 45-degree twist midway up.
Which actually, we did see. So Thermaltake has their CTE, which rotates the whole motherboard tray so that the connectors are out of the top. I did see, God, what case was it where the motherboard was rotated, but then the GPU itself was still standard, but it was vertical, so the PCI riser card kind of came down.
Some of your ports were all sticking out the top of the PC, like on those old Silverstone Ravens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, Thermaltake has the Tower 500 or something like that does that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of different models of those.
So interesting stuff. Yeah. Also interesting, which we've talked about before. I don't want to beat it to death, but AI, that I feel like that was the big thing of the show. Every goddamn appointment that we went to, somebody was like, well, let me talk to you about our AI strategy. Oh, really? You just make little feet that hold up graphics cards? Yeah, but they were made with AI. I'm just kidding. We didn't get any of those appointments, but yeah, it was like everyone had AI to some degree. And Brad Charkis, who couldn't be here, he actually had a really good article. Every place that we went, he asked about their AI strategy and kind of got the feedback and stuff like that. And he compiled it into an article being like, hey, should you care now? what's been good, what's been bad. A couple notable ones that I saw was like motherboard manufacturers actually building AI tools into their software. Like MSI had, it was a version of Stable Diffusion in their control center. Oh no, it wasn't. Was it MSI?
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah, or was that Gigabyte? I can't remember. Anyway, so yeah, there was like inside of the software you could launch, Stable Diffusion and run it in there. So bringing the tools to people, which is easier, I guess. But
RGB controllers suck enough as it is. Can we not integrate Stable Diffusion on top of it?
Well, and then some companies just essentially relabeling something that already had some sort of like automatic control to being like, well, now it's AI controlling it automatically. It's like, wait, so you're saying before AI, it was, judging the thermal temperature of your laptop and ramping up fan curves and adjusting wattages based off of, the temperatures. Now you're saying AI is doing the same thing. Is it better? No, it's the same.
Did you change the algorithm at all? Is it using CUDA processing?
Right. No. So
look, the marketing team said, this is what we have. We have to have an AI strategy right now. So we're all in on this new strategy.
Yeah, I get it. I will say, actually, after Brad had left, because Brad left a little earlier than we did, there was one use of AI that I was like, oh, you know what? I actually kind of like this use of AI. We went to the ADATA, XPG, same company. And they had a cooler that they said they've been running training on the cooler in various cases and orientations and things like that to say, hey, in the future you'll be able to put in, who knows if this will come, but the idea is that you'll be able to put in, hey, this is the case I'm using. This is a configuration I'm using, how many fans, and it'll already have trained to say, hey, here's the optimal airflow. So the fans were not bidirectional, but reverse flowing to say, imagine if you were like, okay, I have my AIO and then I have 3 case fans. I plop it in this case. It's already done the training on that, and it automatically says, oh, okay, the front one should be intake, and then the back one should be exhaust, and so it kind of does that on the fly. And I was like, oh, okay. That actually would be an interesting way to use AI to take out the worry of like, ooh, which way should my case fans be oriented?
So just to be clear, the idea is that they're going to use more compute to determine the optimal cooling thing that generates more heat on the CPU to determine how to cool it more. I
don't think that's going to be a local instance of AI.
No.
I guarantee.
So they're doing the profile.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They're doing the profile ahead of time. I'm sorry.
And then you give them your system specs or parts, and then it'll go, oh, we've already done the modeling for that.
Yes.
Asian filtering will do that on the machine. You don't have to do any AI for that. It'll just work itself out. Just when the number goes up, you make the other. Yeah. Anyway,
I've been kind of toying with a video idea, and that is contacting everyone I work with and saying, where do you see...
Oh, wait, hold on. Jeff's calling me. You got a question, Jeff? Jeff, what's your question?
Hey, Adam,
hey,
where do you see AI integrating into your workflow locally with hardware AI running on your PC? How is that actually going to impact your workflow, your day-to-day life, gaming, professionally, video editing, writing? What's it gonna do? What's it gonna look like?
Can it add more star wipes into my video automatically? That's what I want to know.
I think there's already a filter for that. But,
okay. Well, easy then. It's done. Yeah. Thanks for calling. I'll talk to you later.
You're welcome.
When I tell Siri to turn off the lights in my office, they're using the local accelerated machine learning on the A series processors to make that. That's pretty much it for me, right? Like that's the number one for me. That right. and the frame generation stuff on the DLSS is probably all I'm using for the foreseeable future.
Right, but every single company came out with an AI strategy at CES or during their announcement. You know, AMD and NVIDIA obviously came out with a bunch of hardware, and you know, Intel's touting, you know, the first AI accelerated PC and whatnot. What is that actually going to mean for the end user locally running whatever model on their PC, how are they going to use that?
Well,
what does that look like?
It means the same thing that it always does. Like in full disclosure, I made money doing this with like my VR company. We sold a bunch of stuff to corporations who wanted to have a VR strategy. And, that happens because in some boardroom, one C-level person looks at another C-level person and is like, hey, what is our VR strategy, by the way? And then they're like, oh, well, I know these guys and we're working on some stuff. And it's like, it's because they have to know, they have to be able to tell investors, hey, we're doing AI stuff. We think it's important. Who knows? And in 3 years, we won't be talking about it. It's the same as it always is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do think obviously there's a push for hardware. So the local stuff, there was definitely a lot of, there's been a lot of debate of back and forth between local versus cloud, the uses for local versus, and the strengths and weaknesses of each of them. I think the generic rebranding everything of AI is like, okay, whatever, not everything, has AI. Also, I mean, what does AI mean? We've already been using AI in a lot of ways. NVIDIA would like to say, hey, we already had AI hardware with the 20 series, so you've been already using it. Intel's, but then the new APUs, the new Ryzen 8000 APUs, two of the processors have the first socketable desktop NPU in there, right. And they were obviously first in laptops. Intel has their strategy, but the NPU itself is good at certain things, but not others. So it does get confusing, especially with the whole NPU versus CPU and GPU thing, where it's like, oh, well, everything just runs better on the NPU. Well, actually not. That one's the more efficient option. In some cases, actually, you still want to use the GPU. That's going to be better computationally. So I don't know. I mean, I think people when they talk about AI right now, they're thinking about generative models like ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion and DALL-E and all that stuff. Which for the most part is cloud-based. Obviously, there are some people doing local stuff on that, but yeah.
But I mean, the thing that happened last year is we saw an incredible explosion in the quality of content that was generated by those tools. We also saw that there's a lot of problems with a lot of the stuff, right? There's still a completely unclear copyright picture about anything that's generated using those models. The way those models are trained is actively violating copyright, we think, but we won't know until the courts decide to talk about it. And at the end of the day, I think we might see an earlier ceiling to the quality of the stuff that comes out of those generative models than we were expecting, because we're already throwing an incredible amount of compute power at things like ChatGPT and DALL-E, and the ChatGPT 4 got worse than ChatGPT 3. We're not going to see. I think we're going to see a ceiling on that stuff way before. So instead of it being the new way that we do writing, I think what we're going to end up seeing is it's the new way that we generate incredibly high value spam. And we're already seeing fraudulent stuff where people are taking public figures' voices. People who talk a lot on the internet are their parents are getting calls that are like, hey, I need bail. I've been arrested in Florida someplace. And it sounds like you. So I don't think that, I think we're going to see that stuff used for least common denominator. This is my hot take for the episode, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've hit our AI quota. Clark in the chat says AI is AI this, AI that. I'm losing it. We don't have to keep going with AI. It's obviously.
I'm just waiting for Ian to make a supercut of all of us saying
AI.
I'm waiting for my AI rabbit pre-order to come in so I can have a little thing that sits in my shirt pocket and does nothing for me. So it'll be really exciting.
But it's made by Teenage Engineering. They make cool stuff.
Look, they're contracted to design cool stuff. Adam, that's anyway.
True. Outside of the PC at CES, though, we didn't really see too much. We didn't really go to show floors. The last day we kind of poked around a little bit, but mostly it was in the dark corners of the Shenzhen Plaza. And
it's finally back.
Yeah, it's back. It's back.
How'd you feel, Adam?
Yeah. I was excited. Yeah, you'll see in our Willis is furiously working on a BTS video of all of our CES shenanigans, but then also coming back to the Shenzhen Plaza, which it was gone last year, if you remember that. From our behind the scenes video, but
Ian says Intel is winning at 2.7 AI mentions per minute right now. AMD is second at 2.3.
There you go.
You didn't see the Parky Adam?
Is this one of those fake ones that you made up for your show?
This is a real. So we did a
Yeah.
new, what might be my new favorite segment of the year this week on the Tech
It
Pod.
was pretty funny.
Which is that we each came with a whole bunch of real CES products and then made up like 2 or 3 to see if we could fool the other person with which were real and which were fake. The Parky is a real thing. It's a robot that goes underneath your car, puts little lifts and lifts the wheels off the ground, and then like scoots it around like a warehouse floor. It's like a robot valet. I don't think they're actually going to sell any of them. I mean, I don't think they're going to ship a whole lot of them, but it is a thing that exists and is a product.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think anything out of the outside of the PC. Like I said, when you're in that zone, we don't really cover too much other than that. Oh, I was going to ask Jeff. You are a home lab guy. I don't know if that's a good word or bad word around these parts, but
Yes.
was there anything home lab you saw out of CES that you think was interesting?
There's unfortunately not a lot of things that I was super excited about. The thing with Home Lab is we'll usually take just whatever consumer parts are thrown our way and put them into home servers and whatnot. And like I said, there weren't any like CPU announcements. GPU is always kind of difficult to integrate because a lot of that tech is behind closed doors as far as VDI and cloud gaming and all kinds of stuff that I've dived into before. So what I tend to look at for home lab stuff is super power efficient. How can I, the last couple of years has been building up my server rack out in my garage and filling it full of enterprise hardware and whatnot, and realize it draws 1,000 watts. and then, okay, well, let's make that more efficient. What kind of efficiency do I need? What kind of performance do I need out of this? And can I replace my 300 watt, 1U server with a 65 watt chip and still have double the performance? So there weren't a lot of like low power stuff that caught my eye.
Well, what do you think about the Ryzen APUs? Do you think those will be good options?
They'll be fine options. I take that back. The biggest thing with the Ryzen APUs with what is it, Hawkpoint is this next generation, the 8000 series. Is with the 780M they have AV1 encoding. And so if you run a Plex or a Jellyfin or something like that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Does it work in Linux, Jeff?
I believe it works in Linux. Plex has stated they do not plan on supporting it at all as far as AV1 goes. But as far as like Jellyfin, MB, or anything like that, if you run one of those, instead of going out and buying a GPU for $300, if you could run your entire VM stack on an 8700G and have AV1 on board, all the better.
Last year, I switched my old Broadwell E FreeBSD home server to like $100 B-Link and a NAS and a Synology NAS. And I saw a $20 reduction in my monthly power supply. Right. Yeah. Like it was an immediate change.
Dang.
Monthly power bill, not power supply. And with the quick sync support on the Intel stuff running, when I got that working, there was no appreciable difference in like Plex serving and all the stuff I use for it. So it was a real eye-opening moment in terms of what there's interest there. Whether people at CES are going to show stuff, I don't know. Right.
Yeah. I went through the same kind of thing. January 2023. Like I said, I went out to my rack and it was drawing like 900 watts, and I'm like, that's what I'm taking care of this year is getting that power draw down. My server rack out in the garage has more virtualization power available to it today, and it's drawing about 350 at idle.
Yeah.
And I actually swapped out a lot of Ivy and Haswell generation gear for. There's a company out of China called Irying that is taking Intel mobile CPUs, Tiger Lake and Alder Lake, and putting them on ATX motherboards. And so you get 65 watt, 10, 12, 14 core parts that draw, next to nothing.
And then you can put real RAM configs in them too, which is nice because the small form factor, the small boxes, you're limited to usually like 16 gigs at most, I think. Right.
Right. Exactly. And so I've got 2 of those boxes, 2 of the 8-core boxes running 64 gigs each, and they put out to pasture some of my 12 and 16 core boxes. So at 20% of the power draw.
Nice.
Adam, I have a question for you. Something I know you love everything that folds. You love a folding tech, right?
Oh yeah. I've been maining the OnePlus Open recently.
That is a wide boy.
Yeah.
Did you see the foldable portable monitor that Asus was showing?
We did. Yeah. No. It was beautiful. And I love that idea because we actually do take portable monitors to work. In our hotel room, I set up the laptop. It was actually this laptop, and then I have a portable monitor next to it. But yeah, if I could have a folding one, the screen real estate is one thing, but honestly, it's the travel that's the other thing.
Yes.
Because yeah, like I was worried. Sometimes you worry about packing gear and traveling with gear, and being able to have it fold actually makes me feel more secure about it.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing that I did notice, I know you guys talked about it in the latest episode, but when we first saw a folding laptop, it was the Lenovo ThinkBook X1 or whatever, their folding laptop, and it had a specific kind of bezel and a hinge design to it. And then I started seeing it. There was another company that came out with a folding one, and I was like, wait, this is the same like outer shell and hinge mechanism. It's actually the same one that's on the Asus. So I think it's not bad. I'm not saying it is a bad thing. I just think there's some manufacturer out there who's making these portable displays that it all looks the same. So it's got the same bezels, got the same thickness. The hinge technology, looks similar.
Is it like bar hinge, small bar hinge? Is it that kind of thing? Is that what we're talking about?
I mean, it depends. But like we didn't see the inside of it or anything like that.
Okay.
So I mean, the actual hinge itself might be different on the Asus one, but like it definitely looked like that first generation ThinkBook X1 when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's funny. There must be some manufacturer out there who just is cranking them out, and everybody's rebranding them for different reasons.
It's you kids these days have it so easy going to CS with your laptop computers and your portable monitors.
Right.
Back in my day,
Will was hugging around a 24-inch Sony Trinitron CRT and doing it.
Look, we carried full-size cheese grater Mac Pros at Tested. We had to load them on the back of a van, and I would get up Saturday morning before CES and drive over the mountain. It's only 11 hours from San Francisco, but
actually there was only 1 year where we actually shipped down towers and monitors and the full rig thing, and it was like I was like, I'm never doing that again. Yeah,
it was the hotel people were always really impressed when we would be like, hey, we're gonna need 4 or 5 Bellman carts here, and it would just be desktop PC after desktop PC rolling in.
Yeah. So interesting stuff. The last thing that I'm excited to talk more about is the MSI Claw, their new handheld that has Meteor Lake in it. I have one right here, actually. Just kidding. Just kidding. That was a joke.
That's mean.
Oh boy. No, MSI's calling right now.
What? Yeah. Actually,
that's where that went.
Yeah. So MSI let me borrow one to take it up and show it off during the live episode that we did up at the Asus booth, and then the person who had given it to me had went back to the booth. So there was a point in time where I was unattended by any sort of rep to between the Asus booth and taking it back down to the MSI booth. I actually filmed a little. It'll be in the behind the scenes thing. It was kind of funny. Yeah, and I was like, I could take the back off this thing, or I could walk away accidentally. Nah, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, I guess the question for you, Jeff, because I know, Jeff, you're a big fan of the handhelds as well. What do you think about the Claw, and specifically about Meteor Lake and its chances versus AMD?
Finally.
Right? Competition is good.
Competition is good. Competition, raises the bar, and a rising water raises all ships, and that's look, I like Will said, I'm very bullish on Arc. I think more competition in the space, especially at the APU space, is incredibly important. What I am even more bullish on is probably Intel and their mobile graphics. For a while, because there's been no competition in the APU space, we get for what was it, 3 or 4 generations in a row, we had the same Vega integrated graphics with 8 compute units on every APU that rolled out.
Which weren't bad. I mean, they were serviceable. You could game
They
on
were
them.
serviceable, but they also weren't great or good, you could even say. And then, when the mobile handhelds started coming out, they started bumping back up to 11 and now 12 compute units, and now we're getting RDNA 2 and RDNA 3 in the newest ones. But we're kind of still sitting right there at 12 compute unit, and even though AMD has produced a 24 compute unit APU package in the past in collaboration with Intel, thank you, Skull Canyon.
KB Lake G.
Yeah, KB Lake G. But there's been nothing like that since, and no real indication that AMD is going to try to compete with high level graphics, probably for the fear that it would cannibalize some of their other markets or something like that. If Intel's going to come in and they're going to put 32 execution units on an Alchemist or a Battle Mage integrated chip, that's going to force AMD to answer, and that's going to raise the level of graphics that we're getting in these APUs. So whether this one outwardly competes right now with the 780M, which is the current high water mark for AMD mobile graphics, or even if it's close, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in 6 or 8 months when we start seeing Battle Mage come out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the video we had up had a lot of comments on it, and a lot of people being like, I mean, there's a lot of it just looks like an ROG Ally. No, you mean it looks like a handheld? Like how many different form factors can you get? Like I don't fully understand that one.
There's a finite combination of fingers that you can.
Yeah, I was just like, they're just ripping off faces. It's like, I mean, it's just a screen with a controller on the side.
It's just a Game Gear.
It's a bigger Game Boy.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a Game Boy Wide.
Quite
Game Boy Wide.
see that. But yeah, I mean, I do think competition is good in the space, and I mean, especially for efficiency, that's kind of the big thing, right? Especially for these handhelds, but it also translates into thin and light laptops. So yeah, I'm curious about it. Obviously, we haven't had any testing. They're not in for release, but competition's good, and I really think they actually can compete in this space and will continue to go forward. I will say that interview we did with Tom Peterson, Tap, was fun. It was fun to sit down with him and talk about this, because obviously he's passionate about it, and he was like, man, the learnings that we've been able to take with the discrete cards, apply them to the Arc GPU in Meteor Lake is definitely been a huge thing. So you're getting the same driver updates day one, or they call them day 0, whatever. And then yes, I did push on Battle Mage. I did ask, on the video, and then actually off the video, I did, try to push some more. And he's like, well, listen, I would really love to talk about it, but now's not the time. And I was like, I totally get it. I totally get it. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Thought we were friends, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Is there did they announce pricing for the MSI thing?
The Claw, yeah.
Claw?
So it starts. The low end model is $699, so $700, just like the Z1 Extreme version of the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go. That comes with the Core Ultra 5. Can't remember the number. It's not 155. It's
155H.
Is it 155? Okay. And then there you step up. So there's 3 different versions. You step up. The top 2 options have the same Ultra 7 CPU, but more storage. I can't remember off the top of my head how much it is. I think it's maybe 512 and 1 terabyte. I can't remember. And then I got conflicting reports. I thought MSI had told me that very top end option doesn't have 32 gigs of RAM, but I did see some people being like, "Oh no, that top end option has 32 gigs of RAM." So I was a little confused on that, but I like having the options, and I mean it's hard. I mean the price, it is hard to compete with a Steam Deck, but also I don't I actually am fine with a lot of the Windows-based handhelds, and think there is a reason for them to exist, and I do appreciate them for where they're at. And for that price premium, I still feel like you're getting a pretty good experience. Obviously, because it is Intel, it does have Thunderbolt 4 support. Somebody in the comments asked about Thunderbolt 5, and the story there is that, hey, right now it's discrete. It's not integrated onto the CPU in this version, and who knows for the next version. And to have a discrete Thunderbolt 5 chip in there just would add cost to it. And, how many people are actually going to use the Thunderbolt 5 port, so it didn't really make sense at this point. But who knows, maybe in the future when it becomes discrete, that's a whole separate thing. But, yeah. So
I'm curious about battery life on this stuff. I like the 1080p screen on that size device. I'm generally skeptical of, I think.
So MSI's claims, because it is the largest battery out there, 58 watt hour battery, they're saying between the efficiency of I don't know the exact testing, but their claims are between the efficiency of Meteor Lake and the 58 watt hour battery that on comparable Allies, you're actually going to get, and running the latest and greatest thing where the Ally can last for about an hour and a half. They're saying they last for 2.
Yeah, I was seeing MSI claim 2 hours at full tilt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I don't know what brightness, but they said,
Yeah. Obviously we'll have to test it, but hopefully MSI is not coming out claiming something that they can't support, because that would just look bad. But it sounds like battery life they're definitely thinking about it. That's why they put a larger battery in there. They probably wanted to get away with even a larger battery than that. But, who knows? Maybe around
I just got one in with a 75 watt hour battery.
Was it the Coon? The Ionia
Coon.
Oh,
yeah.
man. Mine's still on back order.
Yep.
God. Yeah. I want to try that.
Yeah. Review coming probably another week and a half or so on that one.
Yeah.
But,
So it's funny for me, though. I actually don't care about battery life at all personally, because I'm always on the couch and I just have a plug right there. And I'm like, okay, I'll just plug in. So
I always play games on the Steam Deck that are like, I hardly ever play anything that's going to hit battery. And if I do, I usually am streaming it from the PC in the other room, so that then it's just a video stream, and the battery's like 6 hours at that point. Like, the battery's longer than I'm going to play, basically.
Yeah. So I would say the only time that I really do care about it is when I take it on trips. Like I know the Steam Deck is the most efficient option, so that's what I would use to game on like a plane or going on a trip kind of thing. Will it be Steam Deck efficient, especially Steam Deck OLED efficient? Probably not, but I do think it will at least compete with the ROG Ally. Like I don't think it's going to be a dumpster fire by any stretch. So
I'm really curious if Intel's working on their version of the SteamOS, like, because Valve has famously done a lot of work on AMD drivers and the Vulkan DK Vulkan, I can't remember, to get that running on the APU as well, to get x86 games running on the APU as well, or Windows games running on the APU as well. Rather, sorry, I'm getting tired. I wonder. I'm curious if Intel's working on the drivers in the same way. That's because that's, to me, one of these higher powered machines running SteamOS seems really compelling. I don't understand why they don't really exist at this point.
I know Aya Neo just announced this last week. They have their Aya Neo Next 2 is going to be shipping with SteamOS through HoloISO.
Oh, is it? But is it is it an APU or is it an Intel box?
It's APU. It's AMD APU.
Yeah.
Low
so that's
NPU.
a little easier transition, I think.
Right? Though I have heard, because a lot of people were excited about that. I did ask some people about, like, hey, do you think we'll ever get an option of a handheld that can dual boot? Say, if you want Windows, you just boot into one side. If you want SteamOS, you boot into the other. And it sounds like Valve is, and rightfully so, not excited to really put the version of SteamOS on other handhelds. Sure, there is that SteamOS through the HoloISO, but it is not the same thing. I am actually not excited for it. I think there's a reason why most companies aren't just doing that. I'm curious to see how the Ionia device pans out, but I am not. I don't know. I don't think Valve is going to come out with an equivalent SteamOS for handhelds anytime soon. Because why would they? What would they get out of it?
Well, but I mean, I guess my point is, it's a lot of it's open, so fundamentally, it's behind the scenes work that you would need to do to make that getting the Intel drivers up to speed, rather than like, it's not like they have to reinvent the whole thing. They can just take the pull the repo and rebuild it with the right drivers and ship their own version. Like there's nothing stopping them except for time and dev energy and dev effort and money and all the normal things.
One of the biggest hurdles I see with SteamOS on the Steam Deck versus other devices is that tight integration with power control and brightness and all the Steam controller itself. How do you use the trackpads? How do you remap the controller?
Yeah.
That's all dev time that would need to go into each individual device or each individual platform if you're using AMD versus Intel, or hey, maybe NVIDIA gets into the mix and throws an MX 350 into something.
Yeah,
but the benefit is you get tight integration with the controls, and you're not trying to do touch screen windows on a tiny screen. So
I understand why a lot of people don't like the Windows experience on handhelds. I'm okay with it. I have no problem with it. I honestly, I think it's here to stay for a while. So anyone thinking that Microsoft is going to come out with a light version of the OS, or SteamOS is going to get widely adopted, I don't think.
If you're relying on Microsoft to develop a GUI fix, their control panel has been broken since XP Service Pack 3. So
look, they already did the GUI fix for small touchscreens. It's called Windows 8. We all loved it. We're tiles, man. We're all using those tiles today. So
anyway, we've been going for a while. I do want to switch over to Q&A. We've got a
real quick, there's a super chat that came in from $2, VZ Gestures, asking, hey, I heard a rumor that Gordon is a handheld convert.
It's true. I talked about it on I think on the stream at a CES, but he sent me a photo of a Nintendo Switch in his hand, and he's like, oh, this thing's awesome. I'm gonna save more commentary for when I can get him back on to chat about it, because we have some things to catch up on.
With so many handhelds, I wonder what I'll choose.
I'm not quite sure. So
it's just gotten real into Smash, I guess, is my guess.
Oh yeah, he's a big Smash player. Hooks up his GameCube controller. He's using the game controller.
Yeah, Wavebird probably knowing Gordon.
Exactly. No, he's like, what? Anyway, if you have a question, get them in now. We're going to do limited questions real quick so we can get out of here. But if it's a really good one, I'll get to it. Or if you're watching or listening to this later, go over to the link to the Discord that's in the description. We have a channel over there for questions on the show, and hopefully you can get them read. I do have some super chats that I want to get to. POV walks with, I don't know, I can't read the rest of it. Rovin, it's getting cut off because it's too long. $5 Canadian earlier. Thank you so much. A question for Jeff. How do you focus your laser engraving objects with radius and height changes like the mug you showed earlier? I got it.
I had the same question. I'm glad they asked.
Like this mug. So I have a rotary jig. So it's a motorized second axis for it. I'm actually using Galvo lasers, which is a set of mirrors that actually points the laser wherever it needs to go. So instead of having a gantry that moves back and forth XY like a 3D printer would, it's just a laser beam that shoots in very precise patterns. I've actually been looking at doing a full breakdown video of how I do my merch and what equipment that I use for it. It's a really cool system if you've never seen a Galvo laser work. But cool. kind of like cameras, the laser does have a focus plane. And so you can be above it or below it within a certain amount, and depending on what lens and whatnot, you can widen or narrow that focus plane. So nice. Little height differences like on here, the lens that I'm using, that's a non-issue. So as long as we're within like 5 mil or so of where the focus plane is at, you'll never notice a difference in the cut quality.
That's really cool.
Nice. I dig it. Lucifer gave us $6.66. Always on point with that one. I appreciate it. When Xbox used checkerboard rendering, people flipped. Now DLSS and FSR are the norm. What do you prefer, regular or fake frames?
I hate the term fake frames.
How fake do you like your frames?
I mean, look, I play single player stuff at the highest possible settings, and when Digital Foundry did their thing last year, the year before with Forza Horizon, where they're like, 30 frames a second with motion blur on isn't that bad. I watched that video and I tried it and I was like, man, okay, this isn't that bad. But also I play competitive stuff. I'll turn DLSS on happily if it smooths out micro stutters and frame rate all day long, and I'm not going to complain ever. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the term fake frames. I hate it because yes, it's fake. It's not straight up rasterized rendering that we've known for 20 years, but at the same time, it's a new way of making sure that your gameplay stays smooth. And when I'm playing, games, I'm not sitting there pixel peeping. I just want a good experience playing the game. I want it to be smooth, not jittery. Turning on DLSS or frame generation or whatever else to help my experience be better and me not go, oh, there's a little artifact in the corner right there, and oh, this game is unplayable. I've never once said that.
Well,
yeah.
and oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like upscaling, especially now, like I don't see too many people angry about upscaling anymore. It has gotten to a good spot, whether you're, DLSS, FSR, XeSS, like there's some good upscaling tech out there, and you're really not missing much if you just have the equipment and you turn it on. It depends on the game, depends on the implementation, that kind of thing. And obviously it works good on handhelds too. I use it there a lot. I think it's more the frame generation now is like the thing. And like, even for me, like it definitely is just like, it's just a little bit of an outlier. I'm still not fully on board on the frame generation stuff, where DLSS upscaling stuff, after DLSS 1.0, I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I don't hate motion smoothing on my TV. In fact, I have it turned on.
Okay, we're going to get out of here. Thank you, everybody. Our guest is never going to be brought back.
Wow.
There's a final nail in that coffin. Oh my God. I don't even want to talk about it. We're running short on time. Sorry, Will, you were going to say something before I really...
No. I was just going to say...
Let's get out of... I want to get out of the far
away... Can we talk about
possible.
GPU reviews again?
Yeah.
I want to go back to that safe space.
Wow. Like people have bad feelings about interpolation from the time when like the Xbox 360 PS3 generation was live, and people were upscaling 480p to 1080p, and it looked janky and bad.
Halo 3.
Yeah. And now we're starting with more pixels. The technology's gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
It feels better. The same thing's going to happen as we move from the raster pipeline to a ray trace pipeline, or less of a hybrid, more of a pure dynamic light pipeline. We're going to see a lot of the same stuff happen, right? The stuff that was slow and janky now is going to feel archaic in 10 years, and we'll look back and be like, oh yeah, I didn't like frame generation, but it's great now. I mean, that's my. I've seen this happen multiple times.
As kind of a parallel, when's the last time that you genuinely cared about the resolution of your camera? How many megapixels it had?
The iPhone 5 was the last time I probably thought about that's when I stopped using my mirrorless and just started carrying the phone everywhere.
I did the same thing. I sold my DSLR back when I got, I think, my iPhone 4S. Same exact time. I had a kid at that time. And the rule has always been the best camera is the one you carry with you. Guess what? The iPhone took good enough pictures for me to have all the pictures I ever wanted of my kid.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same kind of thing where resolution is going to be less of a thing moving forward. It's going to be just the experience, the smoothness, the graphics quality, less than, was it rendered at 540p in the case of Halo 3, or was it rendered at 900p or 1080? Heck, I think Hogwarts Legacy on a lot of PCs defaults to sub-rendering, defaults to 1080p resolution rendering, and then upscaling to 1440 in the default settings. So it's going to be less of a thing.
Yeah. A couple more questions, and then we'll get out of here. Friend of the show, Green Protagonist, gave us $10 super chat. Thank you so much. Said, I've seen more content from creators interested in VDI. With the increase in handhelds, do you think there is a future for VDI and in-home headless boxes for game streaming?
I hope so. I love VDI as a technology. I've used it. I mean, obviously I've covered it to death on my channel, it seems, but I also haven't covered it in a couple years. There's always going to be use cases for it. I think the one that's kind of reared its head since 2020 has been remote work and how do companies keep data safe. And, rather than giving every engineer that we employ, Dell workstation replacement laptop that's 3 inches thick and costs us $6,000, could we just have them remote into a VDI box and do all their work on-prem and then have backups of that data and have the data never leave our facility because they're literally just viewing a monitor of it. That's fantastic. With the uptick in handhelds, the question is going to be graphics quality versus stream quality versus latency versus a lot of different things. The handhelds, while they're getting good enough to play 1080p 60 frames per second, we're still doing it at low settings because that's the silicon that we have inside those handhelds. Battery life is still a concern because you're drawing, 35 and sometimes 40 watts out of your handheld, when if you were just streaming, you could do it for 5 watts, like Will said earlier with the Steam Deck doing NVIDIA Game Stream. There's going to be use cases for VDI, but how willing are companies to let that technology go? Because right now it's a licensed technology from both AMD and NVIDIA, outside of single-use, single-instance, single graphics card kind of situations. We'll see.
I think it's for home consumer use. It's much more likely that people just mash the stream this game button in their Steam Deck to their Steam PC. I've installed Moonlight and Sunshine and all that stuff to get that running on my machines for the instances where the Steam implementation doesn't work the way I would want it to. But for the most part, I just hit the Steam button, and I think I think realistically that's what people are going to do.
Yeah,
and this side tangent, I have definitely, if there's certain games that I know a handheld just won't run, say like Alan Wake 2, right? I want to play that with all the bells and whistles. There's no handheld under the earth right now for any time soon that will play, full path tracing and all that kind of stuff. But GeForce Now, I've been able to have some good success there. Once again, that depends on your network and, your environment and stuff like that and how much you care about latency and stuff. But I feel like a game like that, I don't care too much about Twitch shooting, and it is more about the visuals and doesn't need high frame rates kind of thing. And so that's another use case, I think. I mean, that's also you got to pay for an expensive handheld. You probably have to have an expensive network and whatever game
and you
streaming
have
services.
The graphics card to drive it on the server end.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, exactly. So it's more of a privileged kind of stance, but I've definitely seen like an opportunity, like, oh, okay, I could see this being an option in the future for sure.
Well, and if you're untethered, you got to have Wi-Fi that's good. Most of the time when people tell me, "Hey, I've tried this and it didn't work very well," you ask them the question, and the answer is, "Hey, what's your Wi-Fi?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm running an 802.11n setup.
I'm running whatever Comcast gave me."
Yeah. Or it's built into my modem and it's across the house. I'm like, "Yeah, that's not going to do what you need."
Yeah.
So
this ain't it, boss.
Yeah.
We also got a $5 super chat from friend of the show, Denever1G1. Thank you so much. Said, remember tablet mode for Windows 10? That was completely enough. Oh, competent enough. Certainly better than current Windows 11. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. No,
I don't know. I, for one, am glad that Microsoft is making Windows for PCs and not for tablets again. First, it's a better experience for me on the day-to-day.
Oh, you know what? One last CS thing that I didn't talk about on the show that I thought was kind of interesting. Supposedly it's not a new thing. People in the chat were like, "Oh, this other laptop had it." Lenovo had a laptop where you would pull off the screen, kind of detach, like a Microsoft Surface kind of thing, and then it would all of a sudden switch over to Android. And then you dock it back in.
They've done that.
They've
done that that's been a in and out for years. They keep testing the waters with that one,
right? But like this implementation was super smooth, and I was like, wait, is it just emulating? Like, is Windows 11 here and it's emulating? And they were like, no, it's two completely separate systems. The top part with the screen had a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, whatever, a separate battery, separate storage, all that kind of stuff. And then the base itself is what had Windows, separate battery, separate storage, all that kind of stuff. And when you're docking it, you're just putting the Android device to sleep, but it had a handy little button that you press, and all of a sudden it relaunches Android, and then you can use it, the full keyboard and trackpad experience on that. More so
And I'm sure the file sync devices was just a super smooth transition too.
They also had another mode where you would stay in Windows 11, but you would launch Android, and it's not emulating it in there. It's actually running it and then passing it through in a separate window. So kind of interesting little thing. I was like, I could see a use case for that. It was pretty interesting.
Probably for people who like their Android tablets much more than I do, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. We should get out of here because I'm hungry. And I got to let these fine gentlemen go. I do want to thank Will and Jeff for showing up. Will, where should I point people to? Where do you want people to go?
Well, you can find the TechPod at techpod.content.town. It's where all good content lives.
The content town. Head over to the content town.
Also, if you're hiring and want a generalist who does podcasts and communication stuff, I'm looking right now. So you can find me at willsmith.ws. Yeah.
Nice. Definitely go listen to the podcast. It's an awesome podcast.
Thanks,
Jeff, what do you do again, Jeff? Why did I invite you here?
That's a great question. I mean, your server wasn't broken today, so I really had nothing to do here. I'm Jeff.
Smoothing aficionado, I think.
Motion smoothing aficionado. I'm Jeff with Craft Computing. I review everything from PC enthusiast hardware to servers to home labs to handhelds to VR to anything that I'm interested in. You'll find it over on my channel, Craft Computing on YouTube. And in fact, in 5 hours, I'm going to be doing my podcast, Talking Heads. I get to spend another 2.5 hours
evening, right?
on camera this evening.
Yeah. Well,
and Will, sorry, my budget can't afford you. So.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm come in, and I'm always around to come in and swing by and say hi. Though
somebody needs to give Will some money.
And beer.
Yeah, and beer.
I mean,
sure.
I heard that there was beer there, but I've never seen it. That's all I'm saying.
That's all I'm saying too.
Yes.
Well, check back next week for your fix of PC talk here on the Full Nerd. To listen to us on the go, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can point your RSS reader to. Every time you do, Jeff comes over and turns on the motion smoothing on your TV. No,
it's one of the many services I offer.
Yeah.
Unsubscribing real quick. Please. This has been great having you all in my feeds.
I'd like to thank Will for stopping by. Thank you, Will. It's always good to have you.
It's pronounced Jeff. Is there anything else I can ruin for you?
Hey, well, and Adam, next time I promise I won't call you Brad 4 times when you come on the Tech Pod. So
it was fun. It was fun. I understood. Though I am no replacement for Brad Shoemaker, for sure. Jeff, thank you for coming on. Thank you. Coming on.
Thank you.
I appreciate all your spicy takes. Will, did Jeff have enough spicy takes for this episode?
I'm going to say I was a little disappointed in the first half, but second half he pulled through with the most nuclear spicy take of the year so far for me.
Perfect.
I expect next time I'm in that shop that motion smoothing is on that TV, Adam. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't even. This TV's a little too old for motion.
I want
smoothing.
some mad interpolated frames.
When 90% of what plays on my TV in the living room is Bluey, it looks way better with motion smoothing.
Oh my God. Oh, but those new episodes are real good.
The new episodes are fire.
And thank you to Silverstone for sponsoring the podcast. No interpolation on the this icy mist cooler right here.
Silverstone might drop you after that.
Yeah, right.
Your finger okay, Adam?
It's just got a little cut. That's fine. And thank you, Willis, for controlling the verticals and horizontals. Get us the hell out of here. We're not talking about motion smoothing anymore.
Oh boy, okay, we gotta go, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. I need to get a first aid kit for Adam now, just to make sure that he's okay. Thank you for tuning in with us. We'll see you next time. Bye.